for most of us compared to the nights we've had so far this week. So rurally down into single figures, some towns and cities just staying at around 11 or 12 degrees. The strength of the breeze across parts of Scotland will hold temperatures up here as well. And that breeze will remain fairly brisk through much of Saturday and actually into Sunday too. But for many of us, Saturday is looking like a dry day. Limited sunshine across western areas. The best of sunshine will be across eastern areas of the UK, and here temperatures will climb once again to the mid-20s, possibly the lower 20s for parts of eastern Scotland and eastern Northern Ireland. See you again soon. Bye-bye.
That warm feeling inside from Boxed Boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
The latest GB News travel.
Good morning, I'm Russell Holding. The M66 in Greater Manchester is blocked northbound by an accident between junction 1 at Ramsbottom and the A56 because of an accident. There are delays in both directions. The M6 from Lancashire into Greater Manchester is closed southbound from junction 27 at Standish to 26 for the M58 after an accident with long delays towards there. And as you divert in the West Midlands, the A38 is blocked each way by an accident on Tyburn Road at Erdington in Birmingham, causing delays. On the M25 in Buckinghamshire, 2 out of 4 lanes are closed clockwise just before junction 16 for the M40 after an accident. There are queues from junction 14 at Heathrow and clockwise delays too towards and past the scene. And at the Port of Dover, there's a wait of up to an hour at border control. And that's the latest.
You can stay up to date throughout the day by visiting our website gbnews.com.
This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
This is a big old headache because we talk a lot about GP appointments, don't we? But it's certainly almost everyone I know struggles to see a dentist when they need one.
Yes. Yeah.
You know the best time to go to a dentist?
When?
2:30. 2:30.
That's actually quite good. It's better than my gags.
The guy that went into Goa, to India, to get his dental treatment, is that what you're talking about?
Well, yeah, so tell us about that. I mean, this is how desperate people are to get treatment now. So what's the story?
OK, the story is a guy couldn't get an appointment at the NHS, so he went all the way to Goa in India to get his dental appointment. Now, I think he probably just wanted to go on holiday, and he thought, I know, why don't I go on holiday to Goa and then get my teeth done? Look, people are travelling in their droves. There's whole aeroplanes full of people with medical tourists. Like in Turkey, you get a whole aeroplane with people with hair implants, things like that.
Well,
so,
yeah. I was going to go to
turkey teeth, isn't it?
Turkey teeth.
Turkey teeth. Well, now
that's when they strip the tooth down and you have these little pegs.
Yes, they strip them down. But in many cases, they strip them down far too low, so the nerve is exposed and it gets infected, and it's exposed to the elements. So you get infection in the tooth, and then you have to essentially take them all off. But by then, the infection spreads so far. I was getting my nails done the other day, which I don't do very often, and my nail technician said to me, "Is your dad still a dentist?" And I said, "Yes." And she said, "Please, can I have an emergency appointment? I went to Turkey and I got my teeth done, and now they look incredible, but I'm in so much pain. They're all infected." She had 15 taken out from the top and 12 from the bottom, and it's an absolute disaster. But this is what people are feeling like they have to do.
So medical tourism doesn't always work.
No, but it shows, that Alex, that people can't get their teeth sorted here, so they go elsewhere. Listen, do you floss, by the way?
Don't floss. GB News, the People's Channel.
Very good morning to you. It's 9:30 on Friday, August the 16th, live across the UK. This is Britain's Newsroom with me, Ben Leo, and Nana Akwir.
Right, we're going to kick things off with defiant Priti Patel. Has Dame Priti Patel blown her chances of becoming the next Tory leader after refusing to apologise for sky-high migration figures? She spoke exclusively to GB News.
What about all those international students? They came in after the pandemic. Are we saying that they should not have come into the country? So
brought their families there, didn't they, on your watch?
So the system, no.
Infected blood scandal justice. Thousands of victims of the worst scandal in NHS history are finally set to receive financial support for life.
As Taylor Swift's Eras tour returns to Wembley for 5 shows in London, she reaches out privately to the victims' families of that devastating knife attack in Southport.
And they're back again. The Sussexes on tour. Harry and Meghan arrive in Colombia, where the Vice President, Francia Marquez, reveals she was, quote, moved by their Netflix documentary. Well, at least one person was.
Train drivers triumph. Not only has the government offered them a bumper pay rise, we'll tell you about the so-called Spanish practices that are still being allowed too.
Morning to you, hope you're well. Thank you for joining us this morning. Action-packed show, lots going on, including, Nana, this Spanish practices for train drivers. What does that mean? What's going on?
Well, all these odd work practices that continue to this day. Like, for example, they get a half-hour break, but added to that, 5 minutes walking time to and from the destination, which makes it 40 minutes.
And there's also, if a train driver is having lunch and their manager comes over to them and says, "Oh, hello, can I just have a word about something?" their lunch break resets to 0.
It's
so
ridiculous.
Despite getting a bumper pay rise from the Labour government, I mean, everyone's getting a pay rise these days from Labour, but despite getting that massive pay rise...
Well, not everyone. If you're a member of a union.
Yeah, the public sector. GPs are next, of course. The doctors have had theirs. If you're a train driver, these so-called Spanish practices, despite having a massive pay rise, they've not been outlawed. They're still in place. The other one is something dating back to the 1980s, where if a train driver uses a microwave to maybe heat their food or something, they can take time off to get a medical checkup because they've used that microwave. So that's still in place today. Bonkers.
Well, listen, we'd love to hear what you think. Send us your views, post your comments, gbnews.com/you'll say. But first, let's get your latest news with Cameron Walker.
Thanks, Nana. It's 9:33. I'm Cameron Walker here in the GB Newsroom. Victims of the infected blood scandal can receive support scheme payments for life under changes to a multi-billion-pound compensation plan. Meanwhile, those who were subjected to unethical research will get up to £15,000 extra after the government accepted the majority of recommendations from an independent review into current compensation plans for those historically treated with contaminated blood products. Some 3,000 people across the UK are estimated to have registered interest with the compensation scheme. Ministers have been accused of prioritising unions over pensioners, according to The Times. Tens of thousands more rail workers are set to get above-inflation pay rises, which is expected to cost the Treasury more than £100 million. The Transport Secretary, Louise Hay, says the pay rises are better value for taxpayers than allowing train strikes to continue. But the terms offered to ASLEF union members could have a knock-on effect with other rail unions. Prince Harry's appeared to subtly weigh in on the recent riots in the UK, which were partly sparked by online misinformation. The Duke and Duchess of Sussex have used their first day of their official visit to Colombia to highlight online safety, where Harry said what happens online within a matter of minutes transfers to the streets and people are acting on information that isn't true. The couple were officially invited by the country's Vice President, Francia Marquez, who says she was moved by their controversial Netflix documentary where they laid bare their troubled relationship with the royal family, which eventually led to their departure as working royals. The number of pharmacies in England could fall below 10,000 for the first time in almost 20 years. That's a warning from the National Pharmacy Association, which claims 7 pharmacies a week have so far closed this year. Cuts to budgets and medicine becoming more expensive has been blamed. If numbers fall below 10,000, it'll be the lowest number since 2005. A cliff-edge return to commercial bus fares in England could be around the corner after the government refused to commit to extending the £2 cap. Since January last year, a single bus fare in England has been capped at £2, something bus companies say is vital to enhance their access and education and jobs to young people. The government is working with the industry to try and find a solution. 2 doctors and 3 other people, including the personal assistant to actor Matthew Perry, have been charged with supplying the Friends star with ketamine. The assistant has since pleaded guilty. The powerful sedative caused the actor's death from a drug overdose nearly a year ago. The US Attorney General says the defendants, including a woman known in Los Angeles as the Ketamine Queen, were part of a criminal network that gave the drug to Perry and others. Well, those are your latest GB News headlines for now. I'm Cameron Walker. More in half an hour.
For the very latest GB News direct to your smartphone, sign up to News Alerts by scanning the QR code or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
Good morning, hello and welcome to Britain's Newsroom, live across the United Kingdom and on GB News with Ben Leo and me, Nana Acquia.
Morning to you. Hope you're well at home. Thanks for joining us. Action-packed show coming up. How are you? How's your week been?
It's been very good, actually.
I've not seen you since last Friday.
Have you missed me?
I have, and I'm sure the viewers have as well. So much going on. These GDP figures are described as gangbusting, 0.6% in the 3 months April to June, 0.7% in the 3 months prior to that, and that makes it the best 6 months of GDP growth in 7 years. Some saying that completely blows apart Rachel Reeves' claim that they inherited the biggest mess, since time began.
But Rishi Sunak seemed to leave at the sort of a good point in terms of he could have taken some credit for the financial situation, but sadly, no.
Yeah. And, yeah, of course, Priti Patel, Dame Priti Patel, the former Home Secretary, this morning, last night, she gave an interview to Christopher Hope, our political editor. She's now the leading contender, or one of the leading contenders for the Conservative Party leadership. But she told GB News and Chopper the Tories do not have to apologise for the millions of migrants that came to the UK under her party's watch. Watch this.
Net migration has gone about 2 million over 4 years. And you know what? I don't want to say that was too much. I mean, many would say it is too much.
But you can put context to it. And I think it's too lazy, if I may say so. I think it's really quite sloppy just to go around, the merry-go-round on this, in the sense that students, we shut down. Don't forget, during the pandemic, our borders were effectively closed. There was no travel. What about all those international students? They came in after the pandemic. Are we saying that they should not have come into the country? So
brought their families there, didn't they, on your watch?
So the system, no.
No?
You have to, again, which students brought their families? Look at the categories and the criteria. I do think, put the facts and the context around this. And one final point to make, points-based system, the brightest and the best. I was the one that put a skills criteria to it. You don't come to our country through the points-based system unless you're sponsored, unless you're paying thousands of pounds for your visa, the immigration health surcharge, and you're sponsored. These are people that come here and work and contribute to our country and our tax base.
I mean, wow. Nana, do you think she's blown her chances to be Tory leader? Some are saying that this morning.
No, I actually don't think she has. And the reason I say this is because I'm not sure how relevant the Tory party are anyway. I don't think anyone's listening to any of them, which is unfortunate, but I think that's the reality. And also, I suspect we'll be looking at Sir Keir Starmer closely and seeing what he does with regard to this situation. The Tories cannot escape the fact that they have presided over this mass immigration disaster. But I don't know whether the Labour Party will do much better, so I don't know. I'm not so sure she has. I think people aren't listening, and so just for that sheer fact, she hasn't blown her chance.
But the Tories do, of course, need a new leader.
Yeah.
Is this going to do her leadership chances any favours? There was I think it was Con Home poll the other day where she was bottom of the pile, Priti Patel, on something like 3%. Yeah, but I just think even if you believe that, what Priti said there, that they have got nothing to answer to, nothing to apologise for, I don't think it's very politically shrewd to say that. I mean, immigration, as far as
I just don't want to hear apologies from any of them. I want to hear what they're going to do about it.
Yeah.
And now we're here.
Good point.
But if you want to catch Dame Priti Patel's full interview, you can hear exactly what she said with regard to immigration with Christopher Hope, then check out Chopper's podcast on gbnews.com or wherever you get your podcasts.
We're joined now by journalist and broadcaster and Saturday 5 host Benjamin Butterworth. Nice to see you in a different environment other than the Saturday 5, Benjamin.
It's just a different chair, isn't it?
Yes.
Lighting, different background, same place.
We got rid of the boy band stools, luckily.
Exactly, yeah. No, it's nice to be on the other side of the table.
Yes, indeed. What do you make of Priti's comments then in that interview with Chopper?
I'm quite surprised, to be honest, because I think if you'd asked me a month ago, I would have thought she would be the favourite to win this election. And now I think she's the only one you can really rule out. I think having listened to that podcast, she's still in government mode. She's wanting to defend what they did, to just say, oh, we didn't get anything wrong, it was all OK. And actually, that's not going to be very wise, because exactly as Nana just said, people that are voting in Tory leadership election, they want to know what's going to come next. I also think that the Tory membership is obviously to the right of the country, hence joining the Conservative Party. So they're going to be people that probably want much lower immigration, probably quite angry about what's happened, and she's not appealing to them. It strikes me that Dame Priti Patel isn't really trying to win this election. It's more about protecting her legacy, and that surprises me because I think she could have had quite a good chance.
I mean, look, I think Priti Patel is a good person. I think she has a lot of traction as a potential leader. But I just look at the leadership candidates and think, that actually a lot of them are worse than her. I mean, Tom Tugendhat.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of game playing going on. So at the moment, most of them are on the right of the Conservative Party, and they have to win over the MPs if they're going to get through to the final 4 who will speak at Tory conference, and then 2 of them will go on to be voted by Tory members. Now, I'm told by people in the Tory party that Priti Patel is not particularly popular with her parliamentary colleagues, so maybe her chances are sort of doomed from the start if that's the case, because they determine it. But you've got people like Tom Tugendhat who are pretending that they would bring Britain out of the ECHR. Well, he's never said that before in his life, and so it feels like there's a lot of politicking of people swapping sides within the party to try and persuade MPs.
You mentioned that Priti perhaps isn't very popular with the parliamentary party and her colleagues. Do you think maybe in her defence with this interview she's maybe trying to appeal to the One Nation wets in the party who she needs temporary support from before it goes to the membership?
Well, I think wets might be a choice term, but yeah, I think that's exactly what she's doing, because it's more competitive on the right of the party. You've got people like James Cleverly going for it, and she sees that Tom Tugendhat had kind of cleared up the moderate side of the party, so she's going to try and bring those MPs. It's a strategy to get through.
So,
I don't think she has a chance.
I do lose interest when we start talking about the Conservative Party. Let's move on to the Labour Party. Rachel Reeves.
Yes.
Not that this is even more entertaining, but it's more slightly interesting. They are in power. She's now talking about raising taxes. They weren't going to raise taxes on working people, a very loose definition of working people. Keir Starmer was, again, sort of struggling with the definition, which encompassed everybody. So, obviously, they had to raise taxes. And now it looks like they'll probably be going back on some of their pledges.
Well, she ruled out any raises of VAT or national insurance or income tax. Yeah. So we can assume that that won't happen, because I think it'd be far too difficult to row back on that. But that doesn't include things like capital gains tax, inheritance tax, which are the ones rumoured to rise. Now, I think the growth rate of 0.6%, you were saying it's...
gangbusters.
Exactly.
It's been described.
Now,
not really.
I think that reveals a lot about the state of Britain if we think that's a level
it far outperformed any European country. Germany absolutely wiped the floor with them. And as I said to Stephen in breakfast, it's the best 6 months in 7 years. So, I mean, take what you can get.
Yeah. But that's been a terrible 7 years. Yeah. I mean, it's higher than the US, I think, in this period, but the US has had significantly better growth for some years. So we're not in a great position. And I think, you know, today's Daily Express front page says how could she possibly raise taxes when the economy is doing this well? Well, in June, we had flatline growth, i.e. we didn't have growth. Now, that may have been because investment was held off during the general election. That might be the explanation. But it suggests that this could be a blip. And also, the finances are really quite fundamentally broken. The ability to fund things like the NHS is a long-term issue.
Too much money. It's about reorganising it rather than giving it more and more money. It's just a simple black hole. No matter how much they give,
that may be the case, but you know, before the election, the IFS said there was a £19 billion black hole, regardless of who won. Tory ministers acknowledged that at the time, and so that's the kind of situation where, you know, does this growth level cure that? I don't think it does.
Well, you see, the bottom line is, before the election, we all knew about the black hole. But surprise, surprise, there's a black hole. Of course there isn't. Right, well, stay with us, Benjamin. Next, we'll fill you in on all the action of Harry and Meghan's trip to Colombia and what security measures are in place for them. You're with Britain's Newsroom on GB News.
Good afternoon, Britain.
Your lunchtime update on the stories that matter across the UK.
From breaking news and insightful analysis, inspiring stories and lively debates. Are you comparing yourself to a former Prime Minister?
Which is it? Stay informed, stay updated, stay entertained.
I just don't know how anyone would not want to be there.
Every weekday from midday.
We are Good Afternoon Britain, only on GB News.
Britain's news channel.
Good Afternoon Britain, weekdays from midday.
It's a very difficult issue, this, right? As far as we know, the boxer with male chromosomes was born with female genitalia.
Yeah, I mean, it's actually quite simple. You know, sex in humans is binary and immutable because we are mammals. And there is a minority of people who have disorders of sexual development, and that can affect a person's reproductive organs. But these people are male or female. And yesterday, what we witnessed was basically just glorified male violence against women and girls. The difference is, I mean, that happens every day all over the world. And the difference is that in every other circumstance, we consider beating up women to be wrong, but it was deemed acceptable by those at the IOC because they're claiming that it's sport, but it's not. It's violence and it's wrong.
Peter, Lottie's right, isn't she, that we've been talking a lot recently about violence against women and girls, and regardless of whether this person is intersex or transgender, they have male chromosomes. That means they have a very, very distinct biological advantage that could actually be fatal to a female athlete competing against them.
Well, of course, sport does need to be fair, and we do need to examine this case very thoroughly. There are reports that the boxer, Iman Khalif, was born a biological woman. She is not transgender. She is not non-binary. She is not intersex. She may have elevated levels of testosterone, but that's entirely natural. It's beyond her control. It's the way she was born. And that is why the International Olympic Committee has said that she falls within the rules.
GB News, the People's Channel.
Hi there, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and I'm going to take a second to tell you all about my show, Dubes & Co. We start off with the issues of the day. We then bring in both sides of the arguments. We get rid of the disrespect. And then you throw me into the mix. And trust me, I'll tell it exactly how it is. And then, of course, the magic ingredient, you at home. We mix it all together, and what have we got? In my opinion, the best debate show in town. Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back. 9:48, you're with Ben and Nana on Britain's Newsroom on GB News. Now, the Duke and Duchess of Sussex have been welcomed to Colombia, of all places, as their 4-day tour of the South American nation begins.
And it's reported that Prince Harry took a swipe at Elon Musk after Southport riots, saying what happens online transfers to the streets in minutes. What does he know? He's not even on the streets. Joining us now, royal commentator Jenny Bond. Jenny, thank you so much for joining us. So Prince Harry is saying that what is online transfers to the streets. What's he talking about? What is he going on about?
It's brilliant, isn't he? I think it's fantastic. Absolutely, someone needs to say this. What happened online did lead to riots after the Southport stabbings, and I think he's making a veiled reference to that. I think we absolutely need someone to stand up and say, this has to stop. This online misinformation, this dangerous world of the online, the digital world. And Harry is using his platform to do that. I applaud him.
Perhaps you might have a chat with the Sussex squad then, who are sort of using their name to sort of be quite awful to people online. So he's not... I just find it somewhat hypocritical. He's not responsible. He's not responsible for what people say online about him or his fans say. Yes, it's despicable what they say online, absolutely despicable. Both sides. We have to stop this vitriol online, and people like Harry or anyone with a platform needs to stand up and say so. I think it's brilliant.
Jenny, do you not think Harry and Meghan are a pair of hypocrites, though? Because they're talking about lies and misinformation. I mean, there were literally dozens in their interview with Oprah Winfrey a couple of years back, saying they were married in the days before. Archie was denied a title because he was mixed race. Meghan had her passport taken away, and so on and so on. Oh, I think Jenny's gone, unfortunately.
Oh, that's a shame.
There we go. Well, just as well, Benjamin Butterworth is still with us.
Listen, now, Jenny seems to think that it's wonderful that he's speaking about what happens online, ends up on the streets. I think that the riots were something that doesn't always happen. People were fooled into thinking that there was some connection with immigration, which is why some people would use that as their justification for rioting. Others just joined in. I don't agree that what happens online ends up on the streets at all.
I mean, I think that would be a mistake to think that, because, you know, a lot of people's exposure to the news, exposure to information, to what's going on where they live, the first port of call is the internet now, and I think it has been for some years. And clearly, maybe a malicious lie, maybe an accidental one, started some of the riots that happened. I think that, you know, he does speak from some degree of experience, which is that the level of trolling that Harry and Meghan get, the level of trolling, as Ben says, that some of their supporters put out is appalling. But I think if he were going to be a leader on that topic, he should be saying it both ways. Yeah. You know, Meghan Markle was the most Googled person in the world a couple of years ago, so no one doubts that, you know, what happens online affects their lives. But the abuse that goes out is sort of akin to, you know, the Scottish nationalists doing the independence referendum. That's the only thing like you can compare it to. So I think that's a real question. But also, in the context of the riots, you know, none of the royals said anything. Back in 2011, they didn't say anything. And so you find themselves in this weird grey area again of are they royal or are they not? Is he wanting to be a thought leader or is he wanted to be the dignified sort of
Isn't he just
patriot?
catching on the back of something that everyone's talking about to make himself more relevant again? Because, you know, that's all very well him saying all these things, but not always what happens online ends up on the streets. Every now and again, something awful like that will happen on the streets. But there's loads of things that go online that don't happen on the streets.
I think it's difficult because he's sort of straying into politics as well with this, because it's a very contentious issue how we regulate the internet in both the US and the UK, and it does feel like they always want to get the headlines. Look, I think he's making a valid point. I think talking about online bullying, online hate, the dangers it can cause is valid, but to attach it to the riots, to put it in this context, does suggest a political element, and I think that makes it difficult when he's still trying to keep things like the royal titles.
I just don't know how anyone can take them seriously or any of their warnings or their work seriously, even when they don't lead by example. Harry said, "We are, quote, no longer debating facts during this tour of Colombia," talking about online misinformation. But if we're going to listen to someone about facts and the truth and being honest, you have to make sure that you in your public life have been honest and factful and truthful as well. They haven't. As I said to Jenny Bond before we lost her, that the amount of lies in that Oprah interview, just total BS, not true. And also when it comes to compassion and humanity and, you know, living a life of service, well, apply that same compassion and humanity and love to your own families, both of you, your father. Thomas Markle hasn't seen his grandkids. If Meghan is such a big humanitarian, why don't you pick up the phone and say, "Dad, you've been a prat, but I love you, I'm sorry, let's put it behind us."
And what about the fact that, what about the denying the king the chance to see his grandchildren repeatedly? One of them he hasn't reportedly even met. So listening to these people pretending to be so compassionate about what happens online ends on the streets when they can't even do the right thing when it comes to their own family. I just haven't got any patience for them.
Yeah, I think a lot of people would have sympathy with the idea that they've shown a rather harsh attitude to their own families. Now, personally, I kind of think families are complicated. We don't know the full story. But there are definitely things they've said which have turned out not to be entirely accurate. I think also when you speak of facts, there's another question here, which is who is funding this trip to Colombia? You know, it will cost an awful lot of money for the security, for the process. You can only assume the Colombian state is a part of that, but it's unlikely to be a big chunk of it with things like private jets. And so the question of who's funding them. And also, if it's too dangerous to visit the UK without state-approved security detail, well, if any country has security risks, it's Colombia. So it's notable that they found time and safety to visit there, but not London.
I think they're just using that as a chance to make themselves relevant again or to get themselves involved in the public eye. They've got nothing really to say about it. Why are they in Colombia?
Thanks, Benjamin.
Thank you very much.
I agree with you for once.
Yeah, we all agree. I suppose in their defence they would say that they are doing something to assist, I don't know, something. All right.
Still to come, a big victory for the thousands of people impacted by the infected blood scandal. We'll have more on that and Dame Priti Patel's rather interesting comments. Stick with us. Annie has your weather.
A brighter outlook with Box Solar, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Good morning. Welcome to your latest GB News weather update, brought to you from the Met Office. Sunny spells for many of us today. Still some rain to clear the far southeast, however, and it's going to be pretty breezy across the northwest. There's a risk of a few showers as well up here, but this rain may just take a couple of more hours to clear the far south and east. But once it does so, many of us will see a dry and fine rest of today, away from the showers across the far north of Scotland, where we do have that brisk breeze. So up in these areas, it will be a slightly fresh day, temperatures in the mid-teens, a little below average for the time of year. Elsewhere, though, it'll feel quite warm in that sunshine. Temperatures climbing towards the mid-20s across the southeast, but widely into the low 20s for many areas in the west as well. There's very little change as we head into Friday evening as well as into the weekend. Showers will persist for some western areas of Scotland. They don't look particularly heavy, but I think they will continue to push through throughout the weekend. Drier towards Northern Ireland, particularly across eastern areas of Northern Ireland and much of Northern England as well as Wales, seeing a fine end to the week after the rather unsettled week we have seen this week, and temperatures still in the 20s to end the day. Temperatures will fall away quite quickly overnight, though, as clear skies develop quite widely, particularly across England and Wales, but also into Northern Ireland, some areas of Scotland later on in the night. So quite widely we'll be down into the single figures rurally. A much fresher night for most of us compared to the nights we've had so far this week. So rurally down into single figures, some towns and cities just staying at around 11 or 12 degrees. The strength of the breeze across parts of Scotland will hold temperatures up here as well. And that breeze will remain fairly brisk through much of Saturday and actually into Sunday too. But for many of us, Saturday is looking like a dry day. Limited sunshine across western areas. The best of sunshine will be across eastern areas of the UK, and here temperatures will climb once again to the mid-20s, possibly the lower 20s for parts of eastern Scotland and eastern Northern Ireland. See you again soon. Bye-bye.
That warm feeling inside from Boxed Boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
The latest GB News travel.
Good morning, I'm Russell Holding. The M6 from Lancashire into Greater Manchester's closed southbound from junction 27 at Standish to 26, the M58 Oral interchange, after an accident in the early hours of this morning. There are delays towards the closure, and as you divert, and also in Greater Manchester, the A5149, the Cheadle Road at Cheadle Hume, is closed in both directions for an investigation, causing delays. In the West Midlands, the A38 is blocked each way by an accident on Tyburn Road off junction 6 of the M6 at Spaghetti Junction in Birmingham, causing delays. Salford Circus is also closed. On the M25 in Buckinghamshire, the outside lanes close clockwise, where there's an accident just before junction 16 for the M40, with queues from junction 14 at Heathrow. And at the port of Dover, there's a wait of up to an hour at border control. And that's the latest.
You can stay up to date throughout the day by visiting our website, gbnews.com.
You really could become the next giveaway winner with your chance to win £30,000 in tax-free cash to spend on anything you like. Listen to what some of our previous winners have to say about winning big with us.
Hi, my name's Victoria. I won the Spring Great British giveaway. So the day we got the money in our bank account, everything just felt just a lot nicer. We went out for dinner, just enter. And you never expect to win, but I did.
Get your entry in now for another chance to win £30,000 in tax-free cash. Text cash to 63232. Text costs £2 plus one standard network rate message. You can enter online at gbnews.com/win. Entries cost £2. Or post your name and number to GB07 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrants must be 18 or over. Lines close at 5 p.m. on the 30th of August. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
I'm Patrick Christie's. Every weeknight from 9, I bring you 2 hours of unmissable, explosive debate and headline-grabbing interviews. What impact has that had?
We got death threats and the bomb threat and so on.
As time passes,
she could have said Storm.
You made my argument for me.
My guest and I tackle the issues that really matter with a sharp take on every story.
Went everywhere.
Something practical could be done.
Or I can become something different. Patrick Christie's tonight from 9 p.m. only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Are the newspapers getting you down?
My wife didn't divorce me that month.
Struggling to separate the wheat from the chaff?
I know that it's a bit of a circus at the best of times.
Well, don't worry. Headliners has got you covered. We'll take the burden of reading the day's news, and if we get depressed, who cares? It's an occupational hazard, frankly. That's Headliners on GB News from 11 p.m. till midnight, and the following morning, 5 till 6 a.m. on GB News, the comedy channel. Nah, just kidding. Britain's news channel.
Good morning. It's 10 o'clock. It's Friday, the 16th of August, live across the United Kingdom. This is Britain's Newsroom with Ben Leo, and me, Nana Aquia.
Leo the Lion. Good morning to you at home. Hope you're well. Defiant Priti Patel. Has Dame Priti blown her chances of becoming the next Tory leader after refusing to apologise for sky-high migration figures? She spoke exclusively to GB News.
What about all those international students? They came in after the pandemic. Are we saying that they should not have come into the country? So
brought their families there, didn't they, on your watch?
The system, no.
A good point. Infected blood scandal justice. Thousands of victims of the worst scandal in the NHS's history are finally set to receive financial support for life. Olivia Utley has more.
Yes, the victims of the infected blood scandal will start receiving those payments later this year. But is it enough? How are victims feeling about it? Find out more with me very soon.
5 people have been charged over the death of Friends star Matthew Perry, as it's revealed he received 20 shots of horse tranquiliser ketamine in his final days.
And football is back. The Premier League football season gets underway today as Manchester United take on Fulham. Paul Coit has more.
And I know how much Nana's missed it. It is back tonight, Manchester United against Fulham, and I guess at the moment it's for the last time that Ipswich are on exactly the same points as Manchester City, but that won't last long.
Nana was just having a little jig during the
I do a little
sting
routine
there.
when the sting comes. And
Don't ask me to do the same. Ain't happening. Not paid enough. Football. I know. Do you care about football?
I don't care about
okay.
football. It's just a load of blokes kicking around some pigskin, isn't it? That's what the football's made out of.
I'll talk to Paul then. Hopefully it's Arsenal season. I don't think it will be. Man City, too much money, too many resources.
Well, that's what I would say. It sounds like, do you actually like football? Too much money, too many resources, overpaid.
I'm a massive Arsenal fan. I bleed Arsenal. But yeah, hopefully it's our season. All of that and more with Paul coming up, and yeah, the rest of the fixtures this weekend. And of course, those rather sensational comments about Priti Patel saying that they've got nothing to answer for when it comes to record migration figures over the past couple of years. I don't think it's gone down very well
Do you know, I mean, look, they've got a lot to answer for all of it. I don't think this is just another drop in the ocean of the disaster that is the Conservative Party. But what do you think? Send us your views, post your comments, visit gbnews.com/your say. But first, let's get your news with Cameron Walker.
Good morning, it's 2 minutes past 10. I'm Cameron Walker here in the GB Newsroom. Victims of the infected blood scandal can receive support scheme payments for life under changes to a multi-billion-pound compensation plan. Meanwhile, those who were subjected to unethical research will get up to £15,000 extra after the government accepted the majority of recommendations from an independent review into the current compensation plans for those treated with contaminated blood products. Some 3,000 people across the UK are estimated to have registered interest with the compensation scheme. Ministers have been accused of prioritising unions over pensioners, according to The Times. Tens of thousands more rail workers are set to get above-inflation pay rises, which is expected to cost the Treasury more than £100 million. The Transport Secretary, Louise Hay, says the pay rises are better value for taxpayers than allowing train strikes to continue. But the terms offered to ASLEF union members could have a knock-on effect with other rail unions. The Conservative leadership hopeful Dame Priti Patel says her party does not have to apologise for allowing millions of migrants to move to the UK in the party's final year or years of power. The former Home Secretary sat down with GB News' political editor Christopher Hope for an exclusive interview on Chopper's Political podcast, where she said it's lazy to suggest net migration was too high.
It was absolutely crystal clear. We as a party stood on a platform, points-based system. Points-based system. And you know why that was? A lot of people didn't want to write about it or report on it at the time. Points-based system means the government of the day has levers to control immigration numbers. That is a fact.
And it chose not to.
Actually, you cannot say that. That is not accurate, if I may say so. Primarily because actually a Conservative government did choose to act on that, and it did in Rishi Sunak's government.
And if you want to catch that full interview, it's on gbnews.com or wherever you get your podcasts. Now, Prince Harry, he's appeared to subtly weigh in on the recent riots in the UK, which were partly sparked by online misinformation. The Duke and Duchess of Sussex have used their first day of their official visit to Colombia to highlight online safety, where Harry said, and I quote, "What happens online within a matter of minutes transfers to the streets, and people are acting on information that isn't true." The couple were officially invited by the country's Vice President, Francia Marquez, who says she was moved by their controversial Netflix documentary, where they laid bare their troubled relationship with the royal family, which eventually led to their departure as working royals. During a panel talking about online misinformation, Prince Harry suggested education could help the public spot fake news.
People are scared and uncertain, and I think one of the solutions to that is education and awareness, because it's becoming harder and harder to stem the flow from the source, and therefore really it comes down to all of us to be able to spot the true from the fake.
The number of pharmacies in England could fall below 10,000 for the first time in almost 20 years. That's a warning from the National Pharmacy Association, which claims 7 pharmacies a week have so far closed this year. Cuts to budgets and medicine becoming more expensive has been blamed. If numbers fall below 10,000, it will be the lowest number since 2005. A cliff-edge return to commercial bus fares in England could be around the corner after the government refused to commit to extending the £2 cap. Since January last year, a single bus fare in England has been capped at £2, something bus companies say is vital for young people to enhance their access to education and jobs. The government is working with the industry to find a solution. Health officials are preparing for any potential cases of a new strain of Mpox after the World Health Organization declared outbreaks of the virus in Africa a global emergency. The strain, known as Clade 1b, emerged in the Democratic Republic of the Congo. There are currently no cases here in the United Kingdom, but cases have spread as far as Sweden. More than 500 people in Africa have died so far this year of the disease. 2 doctors and 3 others, including a personal assistant to actor Matthew Perry, have been charged with supplying the Friends star with ketamine. The assistant has since pleaded guilty. The powerful sedative caused the actor's death from a drug overdose nearly a year ago. The US Attorney General says the defendants, including a woman known in LA as the Ketamine Queen, were part of a criminal network that gave the drug to Perry and others. Well, those are your latest GB News headlines for now. I'm Cameron Walker, back in half an hour.
For the very latest GB News direct to your smartphone, sign up to News Alerts by scanning the QR code or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
Thank you, Cameron, and good morning to you. Thank you for joining us here on Britain's Newsroom, live across the UK on GB News. Ben Leo with you, and, of course, Nana Akweer. And, Nana, I'm not sure what you think, but this new Labour government, they're pretty loose with the pay rises, aren't they, for the public sector?
Handing out money willy-nilly. If you happen to be a public sector worker and part of a union, this is your time now. You can pretty much ask and you should be given. I mean, what have they given? Is it 5%?
Yeah, so, of course, junior doctors got their whack. Train drivers now, their average pay going up to £70,000 a year.
69,000, actually.
Oh, come on.
Don't be extra grand. Let's not give them a bit extra, but 69 grand.
It's a 15% pay rise.
But all of these things, though, do push people into higher tax brackets, and I suppose by some of their reasoning, they might be saying that actually what you end up doing is recouping a lot of that in tax.
The front page of the Daily Telegraph this morning, GPs next in line for PM's cash handouts, doctors at the BMA demanding 11%, and the doctors, GPs, are basically saying they're threatening to bring the NHS to a standstill, quote-unquote. The question begs as well, then, Education Secretary Bridget Phillipson this morning, 3 or 4 times on radio, refused to answer how Labour were going to be funding these bumper pay rises for public sector pay workers.
They've also removed the minimal level of service level requirement as well, which therefore means that these particular agencies can then determine that actually we're not going to work at all and we're not going to give you a certain level of service, which to me then literally means that they have got you by the short and curly. So
what,
to me,
what could go wrong?
It seems a bit absurd, but lots of you getting in touch with some of the things we've been talking about. Nick Simon says, Nana, you are all talking nonsense. Social media did not cause the riots. The tragic murder of 3 little girls caused the riots. People were rioting out of concern for their children. People have just had enough. Well, you know what? The people who are rioting caused the riots. I don't think that we're talking nonsense. I don't think social media caused it at all. I blame people who are rioting for the riots.
And Eileen, good morning, Eileen. You sound fed up of hearing about all the pay rises that entitled people like doctors, train drivers and GPs get, and we pensioners have had a few pence increase. Quite frankly, it's insulting and not worth the stamp on the envelope it's written on. We are the people who put these people where they are today, and we are being ignored. Bridget Phillipson refused to answer where the pay rises would come from. I'll tell you where it's going to come from. Taking winter fuel payments away from pensioners, something Sir Keir Starmer attacked the Tories for in recent years, and also going after those who have investments, I mean, which is predominantly pensioners as well. Capital gains, an inheritance tax, of course. You're going to be taxing the dead and the children of the dead.
Because they're not working people, though. We should have read between the lines. When Keir Starmer said you won't be taxing working people, it's anyone who is not working, who happens to have money, or anyone who potentially could have been working but isn't working or has assets. So you've got to...
I think it's a joke. These people built this country for decades, grafting away. OK, they may have had some slightly more economically favourable conditions,
well,
but...
Not necessarily, though. I don't necessarily agree.
Well, that's the argument from people on the other side. But, I mean, these people built this country, they had children in this country, they worked, you know, their backsides off, and now they're being taxed of their assets,
and
of their homes,
paid tax
of their winter fuel payments.
They paid tax to the people who were above them. So the elders, the pensioners now, when they were working, paid for the people who were above them, who were pensioners. So that's how the thing should go. But anyway... That's
who's paying for all these pay rises.
Coming.
The pensioners.
Yeah, well, OK, keep your thoughts coming. GBNews.com/your say. But we move on to this. Victims of the infected blood scandal can receive support through a scheme of payments for life under changes to a multi-billion-pound compensation plan.
And those who were subjected to unethical research will get up to £15,000 extra after the government accepted the majority of recommendations from an independent review into current compensation plans for those treated with contaminated blood products.
Well, we're joined now by Olivia Utley to take us through that. So, Olivia, can you give us a summary of what the government is saying?
Well, there was a worry at the end of the election campaign that the infected blood money would not be paid. The Conservatives committed to paying it back in April, but then, of course, the election was called. Now, the Conservative government before this one accepted almost all of the recommendations from the review, and that committed them to about, the estimate isn't quite clear, but about £10 billion over the lifetime of these infected blood victims and their families. The Labour government has now committed to this as well, and payments will start as soon as the end of the year. Now, 30,000 people were affected by the scandal. 3,000 of those people have very sadly died, and 3,000 people have already come forward to express their interest in the repayment scheme. So this is going to be hugely, hugely expensive for the new government. But obviously, they have no choice other than to go ahead with it. This is one of the worst medical scandals in British history. The payments will be made for the rest of the lives of the victims who were affected themselves, and the lives of the families, immediate family, who were affected by it too. And it's possible that individual victims could receive up to £2 million over the course of their lifetime. There is this separate payment which has been announced today too. Those are for people who were specifically affected by medical research being performed on them without their knowledge. These were mainly boys at a school, a college, who were being treated for haemophilia and were mostly infected with HIV blood products. They will, on top of that money to be paid for the rest of their lives, receive another £15,000 in compensation. Now, some of those boys who are now quite old men are not happy about that £15,000 figure at all. They're pleased that the government will start paying out, and they're pleased that they'll be getting their money soon. But some of them say that that £15,000 figure is, frankly, an insult. It'll be really interesting to see how the dust settles on this. It is a really generous payout from the government altogether. I mean, up to £10 billion. That is an enormous figure. But individually, and after so long of waiting, it might feel that some of these victims just aren't getting enough.
Yeah, it is an insult, Olivia. Those poor boys at the Trelaws School in Alton in Hampshire acted on as if they were guinea pigs. The government and the NHS getting contaminated blood from Skid Row, from prisons, from prostitutes, drug users in the US, and they knew about it. In fact, doctors here were being given bungs for choosing contaminated blood over British blood, and it's a crying shame.
Do you have evidence of that? I mean, is that a fact?
It's a fact, yeah.
Where does it say that?
Where does it say it?
No, well, I'm just checking, because obviously if we're saying...
I'm not making it up.
No, I didn't think you are. I was just checking.
It's true.
I wouldn't say no, but I was just saying that, where...
Thanks, Olivia.
Olivia, thank you very much. Right, let's move on to the Premier League, something that I know you enjoy. It returns tonight, and who better to preview the season with than sports broadcaster Paul Coyte. Paul.
Nana, I can see your eyes, the excitement in the Premier League coming up.
They've rolled to the back of my head and behind me.
Paul, are Arsenal going to win the league? That's what I want to know, please.
Oh, goodness me. You have to hit me with that one. This was my biggest worry in life. Are Arsenal going to win the league? You know what? They stand a darn good chance of winning the league. And let's be honest here, the main rivals that Arsenal that you have at the moment would be Manchester City and with these 115 charges that are levelled at Man City, and that's going to go ahead in September. So a decision is going to be made one way or the other by January, we expect. Who knows what's going to happen to Manchester City? You know, they may be docked goodness knows how many points. They may be relegated. We don't know. But if on a level playing field, without using any cliches whatsoever, Arsenal have a hell of a chance.
I love Arsenal to my core, but I just, you know, I'm a seasoned Arsenal fan.
You know, what I'm finding strange is the fact that you're going, I think Arsenal no, and there's me saying Arsenal yes, and this is a complete reversal of how things should be.
I think I've been exposed too much to the deep psychological problems of the club over the past decades, which is they've won some FA Cups, they've got to some European finals and so on, but there's something there where we can't get over the line. The thing
about football, and it's that phrase that I love, and it's the hope that kills you. You know, that's it. You think maybe this is going to be the one, maybe this is going to be the one. The thing that winners always say, and great teams, they always say, once you win one, then the next one comes. It's very difficult to us to try and get our head around and think, well, how does that happen? You know, does that really make a difference? But psychologically, it is a huge difference. But then we've got, like Manchester United, for example, they're playing tonight. So they start the Premier League off against Fulham, Old Trafford tonight. And Erik ten Hag, the manager, he said that they're not ready. Now, you could say this about any team because he said we've had a disjointed pre-season. Most do. Tournaments, international tournaments, everybody's losing players with the Euros going on, the phasing in of new players, new signings. So this is nothing new. Although he's right what he says, it actually applies to pretty much every team in the Premier League. So nobody's completely ready. It's always going to be about a month to 6 weeks until you're going to see a team that are playing as good as they're going to play.
And I said to you off air, Paul, I was looking at the fixtures for tomorrow, just reminding myself, and I saw Ipswich at home to Liverpool, and I thought I was looking at the Championship fixtures. I forgot Ipswich had been promoted.
That's right.
Seems a little weird having them in the fixture list.
Well, absolutely. Kieran McKenna, who's done an amazing job and taken them up with two promotions on the trot. And also, if you think, oh, you know, Liverpool, it's going to be Liverpool, this is a great time to be playing. Like I said, when you start a Premier League season, nobody is completely on the route that they should be a little further on. So it's always an interesting what happens at the start. So if Ipswich are probably going to be happy that they're playing Liverpool at Portman Road, the place is going to be rocking. It's the first time in the Premier League in 22 years. Liverpool got a new manager, things changing there. So, you know what? Who knows what's going to happen?
Can't wait.
Ed Sheeran is now a shareholder.
Oh, my God.
It's all ready to go.
He should stick to singing.
Oh, we've woken Nana up as soon as I said that.
Yeah, he should stick to singing.
Thank you, Paul. Great stuff.
Paul.
Pleasure. Enjoy the weekend.
First game is tonight. Man United at home to Fulham.
Fulham, yep.
Great.
Right, next.
Excellent.
Thank you, Paul.
Pleasure.
Up next, what do you make of Dame Priti Patel not apologising for the sky-high migration numbers under the Tories?
Net migration has gone up 2 million over 4 years. And you know what? I don't want to say that was too much. I mean, many would say it is too much.
But you can put context to it.
More of that next. You're with Britain's Newsroom on GB News. Back in a tick.
I'm Michael Portillo. This is GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
You'll relate to this one. We've all been there, haven't we? Tensions high in the car as you head off on the latest adventure or holiday during the summer break.
Now, with the average family set to spend about 3.5 hours a week together in the car driving on the roads during the holidays, new research has shown that our relationships could be tested to the limit.
Yes, figures show that 21% are having arguments for simple things like the driver going the wrong way, which we were saying is not actually very simple. That's very serious.
I was going to say that. I'm surprised it's just 21%. Yeah. If I was going the wrong way down the road,
you'd know about
it. You'd hear from me.
A further 20% squabbling over how their partner drives, yes, and 25% admitting to being more prone to rowing when their kids are misbehaving. It's a lot to deal with, isn't it?
Fair enough.
Well, we're joined now by dating and relationship coach and author Persia Lawson. Good to see you this morning, Persia. What is it about being in a car that just makes things so tense?
Well, I think it's probably quite obvious, isn't it? It's the fact that we are in a confined space, we can't go anywhere, and it can just really creates so much tension and stress, especially if you and your other half or a family member, whoever you're in the car with, are going through a little bit of a tricky time. And if it's really hot outside, that doesn't help either. So inevitably, it creates a lot of irritation and bickering, I would say, from my experience.
And what is it about children? If you add children into the mix, it just makes things very, very difficult, doesn't it?
Well, yeah, because there's a lot of, are we there yet?
Yeah.
Kicking the back seat and just squabbles, kicking the siblings. So adding children into the mix is just going to turn the heat up on that tension.
GB News, the People's Channel.
If you want your news to be straight talking...
This is a nightmare for the Conservatives again.
Down to earth.
It's not just Nottingham where this is happening, is it?
And most importantly, honest.
Hard-working, middle-class taxpayers, they'll get their book thrown at them.
Then catch me, Martin Daubney, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6 p.m. on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Nana Akweer, for an informative, interactive news programme with a difference. It's fun. It's true. You're not wrong. No one will be cancelled. Lovely. Join me from 3 p.m. every weekend, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Neil Oliver, every Sunday night at 6 p.m. on GB News. And if an hour is not nearly enough for you, go to gbnews.com for special extended episodes online every Friday at 9 p.m, where we can truly get into the nitty-gritty of what's going on. GB News, Britain's news channel.
Good morning, 21 minutes after 10 o'clock. If you've just tuned in, welcome. This is Britain's Newsroom with Ben Leo and me, Nana Akweer. And joining us, former Labour advisor Matthew Laza and political commentator Emma Webb. Right, should we kick things off? Let's talk about Priti Patel. She is not apologising for allowing millions of migrants. She's not apologising on behalf of the party for allowing millions of migrants to move into the UK in their final sort of years of power.
Yes, good morning. I mean, I think that this will come as a surprise/shock to millions of Conservative voters, never mind members, because Dame Priti, talking to our very own Christopher Hope on Chopper's podcast, has said that she won't apologise for the fact that net migration under the Tories got to its highest ever levels in the last few years of the government. She says it was lazy to suggest that it was too high, which is a bit strange because even the Labour government thinks it's too high. So I think Priti Patel positioning herself to the sort of liberal side of the Labour Party is a bit of a shock.
Tory Party?
No, it's the left of the Labour Party.
Right.
Saying it was too high, and she's saying it wasn't.
But should she apologise? I mean, should she apologise?
Well, yes, both.
Emma, do you think she should apologise?
I think it's difficult to say whether or not she should apologise. Let me just say very clearly, I think this is a bad pitch from her.
Yes.
I'm surprised by it because it's a sort of politically stupid thing for her to say.
Totally.
Do I think she should apologise? I don't like this culture of public apology. Do I think she should feel sorry and responsible for betraying the will of the British people who have voted time and time again and in poll after poll after poll have wanted to reduce immigration, and the Tories did not do that, and had absolutely no control over our border and failed repeatedly to get the situation in hand. Do I think she should feel sorry for that? Yes, I do. And I think it is going to play very, very badly with the Tory base if she's not willing to take responsibility for that real deep, cutting feeling of betrayal that is responsible for the massive defeat that they just had.
You make a very good...
I'm with you on that as well. I don't agree in the sorry business, but I do think they should take responsibility for the failure.
But you hit the nail on the head there, I think, Emma. You're saying, you know, fine, if you want to defend that, that's fine, but do it in a tone or in a way that is sympathetic and recognise that they did, you know, break their manifesto promises time after time. But it was just like, yeah, immigration's fine. I mean, what is the problem? That's how it felt like watching it.
Which is a very strange pitch from Priti Patel, who was, even when she was in the Home Office, is trying to make herself out to be this sort of battle axe, to then say, oh, well, actually, it's not a problem. What were you fighting for in the first place over the Rwanda scheme? You know, was your heart not in it? Was that... People will be asking, well, was that the reason why nothing ended up coming up with the goods on this? And it's, you know, it's not just the fact that that the Conservatives couldn't get illegal immigration under control. The numbers of legal migration also ballooned after Brexit. They are responsible for that. They are responsible for betraying the electorate.
But the apology won't make any difference at all. But should she apologise, I think, for her own chances as a leader, perhaps. But I just...
I don't think it's going to help her chances.
I don't think...
Yeah, I mean, I think that when we next see the betting odds, she'll be slipping down their rankings.
She's put her foot in it.
What do you make, Matthew, of this train driver union claiming victory after being handed a bumper pay rise by Labour and Sir Keir Starmer?
Well, I think we needed to get the dispute settled. They got less than they asked for, and it's a 3-year deal, so it means that we hopefully will have a prolonged period of industrial peace on the railways. So I think the deal had to be done, and it should have been done. The Tory government should have sat down with the rail unions. It refused to speak to them, and when the government engaged directly with the rail union, then the dispute has been settled.
But then who's next? Because everyone's now in line, and it seems that anyone who's in hock with the unions is able to ask for these bumper pay rises. And the Labour Party, of course, they're being very popular because they're just handing out money.
Well, I think that the first thing is that none of the people who've got what they wanted, so the junior doctors got about a third less than they wanted, and actually it's about the same with the rail drivers. The government, though, you're right, Nana, the government is going to have to make sure that it doesn't appear to be giving in to any public sector pay demands. I think they're going to be tougher with the GPs. It's more complicated because GPs get paid per patient rather than get, the salary increase, but it's how much they give GPs per patient. So I think they need to show some steel, but I think this was the right settlement, and it was substantially less than the train drivers wanted.
Oh, it's also, it's quite, 14.25% is a big pay rise. They're already earning a lot.
It's over 3 years.
It doesn't matter because I think people across the country are struggling. It's their taxes that go to pay for these pay rises. And also the pay rise is no strings attached, so they get to keep these, I think they call them Spanish practices. Yeah. And one of them is anybody sitting at home right now hearing this and imagining the way that they, operate at work and what they're allowed to do. These train drivers, if they get interrupted when they're on their lunch break by a manager, they get to start their lunch break over again. So if the manager says, hello, good morning, they can start their lunch break all over. And they're already earning much, much more than the average.
60,000 to 69,000.
And the system is, I sympathise with the point about train guards, but, they are keeping our transport system stuck in a rut of inefficiency.
Archaic practices, yeah.
So, I think that I can imagine people being a lot more sympathetic with nurses and maybe even to a degree GPs, but possibly not as much. But train drivers already earn so much that this just looks like greed. And if the Labour Party are going to make this kind of case that, it's going to cost the taxpayer less than the amount of money it would cost the economy if they continue to strike, well, that's just asking for hostage-taking, isn't it? That's not a good sort of incentive system to set up.
Everybody's sort of lining up for their pay rise. What about this then, Matthew? Prince Harry's told an audience yesterday what happens online within a matter of minutes transfers to the streets. People are acting on information that isn't true.
Yeah, so it looks like he has weighed into perhaps the biggest political issue of the last few weeks, which is the disorder that we saw on the streets. And he's sort of been absolutely clear. He's broken that royal thing of not commenting on hot topics by commenting on the hottest one of all. And in particular, he's tried to draw attention to the impact of AI, saying he's scared and uncertain about the impact of AI. And then he says it comes down to all of us to be able to spot the true from the fake.
Well, that's hilarious coming from them, isn't it? A little bit.
There's some irony there. And also, he's doing it on his tour of Colombia.
Well, this is to make...
Do
you not think that he's doing this to make himself... get some relevance and attention onto him? Because otherwise, who would be interested?
Absolutely. I think he's certainly trying to justify the tour to Colombia so that it distracts from the other sort of shadier aspects of that. I mean, I think it's one thing for him to try and weigh in on a major issue like this. It's another thing to do it when he won't visit this country, because, of course, he's not going to come to his uncle's funeral because he's worried about his security concerns, we understand. So it's quite odd that he won't make this... he's contributing to the national debate, but just not in the nation.
Oh, he's doing it from the safe distance of the very, very safe country of Colombia. And I mean, we don't know who exactly is funding their security in Colombia, but presumably it's not entirely the Colombian government. That wouldn't be a very fair thing of them to put that on the Colombian people, would it? I don't know if they're funding their own security, but surely with all this money that's being made by all of their various brand deals that I'm sure are
they making money?
No, I don't think they are, which is probably why they can't afford their
Not sure how much jam Meghan's managed to flog so far.
Anything.
Well, she can't find a managing director or whatever it is for the company because they've got such a horrible staff retention problem. But look, I think that he is we could talk all day about how Prince Harry is a hypocrite, but him wading into a topic like this, and I know that misinformation and that kind of thing is very dear to their heart. They love a bit of censorship. But it's actually quite serious, I think, that him and Meghan are effectively setting themselves up as a kind of parallel court that are involving themselves in British politics from afar, interfering in that way from a huge platform that cannot really be properly disassociated from the royal family. They're still using their Duke and Duchess of Sussex titles. And they're meddling in a way that is disrespectful to the democracy in this country. And I think it's particularly horrifying that I think their judgment is pretty out of touch.
And also,
this is I think it's very dangerous for them to be calling for more censorship.
They're out-and-out hypocrites, that's what they are, absolutely.
Who's going to listen to people on misinformation when they themselves are guilty of, bending the truth all the time?
I don't think Prince Harry knows the difference between true and fake when he's married to Meghan Markle.
Well, anyway, didn't they brandish the royal family, or somebody in the royal family, as pretty much racist, changed it to unconscious bias? I don't know, I mean, seriously. Right, time to get your latest news headlines with Cameron Walker.
Thanks, Nana. It's 10:31. I'm Cameron Walker here in the GB Newsroom. Victims of the infected blood scandal can receive support scheme payments for life under changes to a multi-billion-pound compensation plan. Meanwhile, those who are subjected to unethical research will get up to £15,000 extra after the government accepted the majority of recommendations from an independent review into the current compensation plans for those who historically treated with contaminated blood products. Some 3,000 people across the UK are estimated to have registered interest with the compensation scheme. Ministers have been accused of prioritising unions over pensioners, according to The Times. Tens of thousands more rail workers are set to get above-inflation pay rises, which is expected to cost the Treasury more than £100 million. The Transport Secretary, Louise Hay, says the pay rises are better value for taxpayers than allowing train strikes to continue. But the terms offered to ASLEF union members could have a knock-on effect with other rail unions. Foreign Secretary David Lammy has arrived in Jerusalem with his French counterpart, Stéphane Séjourné, to urge a ceasefire in the war in Gaza. It's the first joint UK-France visit to the region in over a decade, where the ministers are expected to visit the occupied Palestinian territories too. Lammy and Séjourné are expected to stress that, and I quote, "there is no time for delays or excuses from all parties on a ceasefire deal." Prince Harry's appeared to subtly weigh in on the recent riots in the UK, which were partly sparked by online misinformation. The Duke and Duchess of Sussex have used their first day of their official visit to Colombia to highlight online safety, where Harry said, and I quote, "what happens online within a matter of minutes transfers to the streets and people are acting on information that isn't true." The couple were officially invited by the country's Vice President, Francia Marquez, who said she was moved by their controversial Netflix documentary where they laid bare their troubled relationship with the royal family, leading to their eventual departure as working royals. The number of pharmacies in England could fall below 10,000 for the first time in almost 2 decades. That's a warning from the National Pharmacy Association, which claims 7 pharmacies a week have so far closed this year. Cuts to budgets and medicine becoming more expensive has been blamed. If numbers fall below 10,000, it'll be the lowest number since 2005. And 2 doctors and 3 others, including a personal assistant to actor Matthew Perry, have been charged with supplying the Friends star with ketamine. The assistant has since pleaded guilty. The powerful sedative caused the actor's death from a drug overdose nearly a year ago. The US Attorney General says the defendants, including a woman known in Los Angeles as the Ketamine Queen, were part of a criminal network that gave the drug to Perry as well as others. Well, those are the latest GB News headlines for now. I'm Cameron Walker. More in half an hour.
For the very latest GB News direct to your smartphone, sign up to News Alerts by scanning the QR code or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
Thank you, Cameron. Right, still to come. Monkeypox has hit Europe. It's spread from Africa to Sweden. Should we be worried? You're with Britain's Newsroom on GB News.
Good morning. Welcome to your latest GB News weather update, brought to you from the Met Office. Sunny spells for many of us today. Still some rain to clear the far southeast, however, and it's going to be pretty breezy across the northwest. There's a risk of a few showers as well up here, but this rain may just take a couple of more hours to clear the far south and east. But once it does so, many of us will see a dry and fine rest of today, away from the showers across the far north of Scotland, where we do have that brisk breeze. So up in these areas, it will be a slightly fresh day. Temperatures in the mid-teens, a little below average for the time of year. Elsewhere, though, it'll feel quite warm in that sunshine. Temperatures climbing towards the mid-20s across the southeast, but widely into the low 20s for many areas in the west as well. There's very little change as we head into Friday evening as well as into the weekend. Showers will persist for some western areas of Scotland. They don't look particularly heavy, but I think they will continue to push through throughout the weekend. Drier towards Northern Ireland, particularly across eastern areas of Northern Ireland and much of Northern England, as well as Wales, seeing a fine end to the week after the rather unsettled week we have seen this week. And temperatures still in the 20s to end the day. Temperatures will fall away quite quickly overnight, though, as clear skies develop quite widely, particularly across England and Wales, but also into Northern Ireland, some areas of Scotland later on in the night. So quite widely we'll be down into the single figures rurally. A much fresher night for most of us compared to the nights we've had so far this week. So rurally down into single figures, some towns and cities just staying at around 11 or 12 degrees. The strength of the breeze across parts of Scotland will hold temperatures up here as well. And that breeze will remain fairly brisk through much of Saturday and actually into Sunday too. But for many of us, Saturday is looking like a dry day. Limited sunshine across western areas. The best of sunshine will be across eastern areas of the UK, and here temperatures will climb once again to the mid-20s, possibly the lower 20s for parts of eastern Scotland and eastern Northern Ireland. See you again soon. Bye-bye.
The latest GB News travel.
Good morning, I'm Russell Holding. The M6 from Lancashire into Greater Manchester remains closed southbound from junction 27 at Standish to 26, the M58 Oral interchange, after an accident in the early hours of this morning. It's closed for an investigation with delays towards the closure and also as you divert. In the West Midlands, the A38 is blocked each way by an accident on Tyburn Road off junction 6 of the M6 at Spaghetti Junction, Birmingham. Salford Circus is also closed with delays as you divert there. Now, train services in Kent have been stopped at Ashford International because of an incident at the port of Dover. There's a wait of up to an hour. Border control, and in East Sussex, the Queensway in Hastings is closed in both directions after an accident and shed load of hay.
You can stay up to date throughout the day by visiting our website gbnews.com.
Welcome back. It's 10:38. Ben and Nana with you on Britain's Newsroom, only on GB News.
Right, Hollywood actor Matthew Perry's assistant and 2 doctors are among 5 people who've been charged after the Friends star died from an accidental ketamine overdose last year.
Let's take a listen to US Attorney Martin Estrada.
As I mentioned, the defendants in this case knew what they were doing was wrong. When they'd refer to the ketamine, they used coded language. They'd refer to it using terms such as, quote, Dr. Pepper, or quote, bots, or quote, cans. Also, defendants Placentia and Chavez, as medical doctors, knew full well this was not the proper way to administer ketamine, and they even talked about that in their exchanges.
Interesting. Well, joining us now with all the latest on this case is showbiz reporter Rebecca Toomey. Good morning, Rebecca. Thanks for joining us. So tell us about this ketamine queen on the west coast of America. And apparently Matthew Perry paid something in excess of $2,000 for one small dose of ketamine that should have cost him or anyone else around $10, $12. What's going on there?
What this case is really showing, at the moment there's been 5 arrests, two medical doctors, including Matthew Perry's assistant as well. And what's starting to come out is that it shows that someone who is very vulnerable with, known mental health conditions and addiction issues has been basically the target of a group of people who have been administering the ketamine into his system while not qualified. So at the moment, this is all allegations. But what's come out is that his assistant was taught by a doctor how to administer ketamine with no medical qualifications themselves. And that this is the problem in that Matthew Perry appeared to be so desperate to get hold of this ketamine that he was paying 165 times more its, street value. He was initially prescribed it by, the correct way with medical doctors. But there seems to be a gap between the prescription that he was given and when he had this fatal dose. And he was so desperate for this, he was reaching other methods, and people were capitalising on that. There's allegations that one of the doctors called him a moron. There was literally no respect. And I think what this situation is showing at the moment, not just a tragedy, but just how we might treat celebrities or people in the public eye with mental health conditions. They are vulnerable. It's actually quite hard for them to get work, and have people often take advantage. Like we've seen with the Britney Spears scenario, when you're a person of such talent and so adored by fans, you have a lot of people around you taking advantage. And I think this is just going to get murkier and murkier, this situation with Matthew Perry, which is a real tragedy to his legacy.
Well, some people might listen to that and say, but ultimately he is responsible for his own behaviour. So although what they did was wrong in terms of overcharging him for something that was really not worth that much, and took advantage of his situation as somebody who's an addict, ultimately he's a grown adult, and he's the one who should be in charge of his own destiny.
Yeah, I agree with you, Nan. I really take your point in that, as far as we're aware at the moment, he did try and get the drugs, he did pay for them. But I think there's got to be, some understanding in that it's not just him speaking to one dealer, it's lots of people. It's this so-called ketamine queen who, there's another case where someone has previously died, it looks like from drugs that they've, passed on to them. And it's just the issue here in that we tend to treat addiction as one thing, and when it's a celebrity, it's like there's a whole new set of rules when it's a celebrity. If this was anyone else, I think we'd have a different approach. And I do take your point in that we all have our own autonomy. But this is someone who's spoken very openly. In his autobiography in 2022, Matthew Perry spoke very much about his issues with addiction, how much he wanted to help other people, because he was vulnerable, and people are always there to take advantage. And perhaps that's just something we might need to consider, on a wider scale.
Yeah, it's sad, isn't it, Rebecca? A man with all the money in the world, a dream job. He was talking in a video before he died, saying that he loved this quote from Jim Carrey, saying that he wishes more people and everybody could realise their lifelong dreams, because they'd soon realise after that that it doesn't solve all their problems. And Matthew Perry was saying, I achieved everything I wanted. I had all the money in the world. I was on Friends. I was a big star of the screen. And yet it didn't solve the problems internally with me. And I thought it was just quite a poignant little clip that was doing the rounds online.
Yeah, Ben, I think it's a really important thing. I work in the world of celebrity and entertainment, and it's very easy to see them not as people. It's easy to mock them, and some of them, are worthy of mocking. But at the end of the day, they are people, and they still have all the same emotions and thoughts and go through the same pain. Now, I know it's hard to feel sorry for them. We're in a massive mansion and awards, but really at the end of the day, I really keep referring to the Britney Spears case, because that situation I think really blew open the responsibility fans, the press, the people around celebrities have themselves of the well-being of someone, and how we must sometimes remember that they are people. And the gift of comedians such as Robin Williams and Matthew Perry gave us all so much in our lives, and it's just tragedy that behind the scenes they were battling so much. And I really applaud Matthew Perry for speaking out, for setting up his foundation to try and have his legacy of helping other people with addiction. While this is a tragic situation, I think sometimes it's kind of in a nice way to kind of maybe try and find a positive in all of this as well.
Yeah. Well, what about Taylor Swift? Now, apparently she's reached out to the families of the Southport victims privately ahead of her gigs.
I have a bit of an issue when someone doesn't stay in their lane. Now, she could do things differently. She could donate. She could perhaps seek counsel as well of what the best thing to do is. I do find it difficult when celebrities who don't have an awful lot of knowledge or expertise in a situation, just with Prince Harry, how he likes to get involved as well. Sometimes it creates more mayhem than the responsibility these people have. They need to take some of that responsibility. We've seen what Elon Musk is doing. Now, obviously, he's not, the same sort of celebrity that Taylor Swift is, but he still has an incredible amount of power. Someone like Taylor Swift, phenomenal songwriter, brilliant singer and performer, army of fans, an incredible amount of power. And it concerns me sometimes how much power these people actually have and are handed over, and that perhaps they should stay to talking about music and, fun things that their fans like to do. I mean, it's a kind gesture, and I'm not going to knock it, but perhaps it's better that, these things don't really get released, even if it's, an accidental. She reached out privately privately. It sometimes just reeks of PR exercises of look how great.
Or did you think, I mean, they were at a Taylor Swift dance class, weren't they? These poor three girls, along with others. So that's the link. I happen to think that's really lovely of her to you know, because she doesn't need to do that, does she? She doesn't need the PR. She doesn't need the money. She literally doesn't need any of it. So for her to do that, you know, and especially with these poor little angels that are at a dance class in her honour. One of them even pictured by a giant Taylor Swift sign beforehand.
Yeah. Of course, she should reach out privately. I mean, to do with the riots that carry on afterwards, of course you should reach out to the victims. And I'm sure she's probably deeply devastated and moved, like with the Ariana Grande concert when she reached out. I just think when it comes to the bigger picture with the riots and everything else that's going on, I don't think we need celebrities to get involved in that side of things. But no, of course, I agree with you on that Taylor Swift reaching out is a really lovely thing to do. I just think it should stay private at this very point in time.
What about Prince Harry then in Colombia talking about to Elon Musk about what goes out online then ends up on the streets?
Yeah, I mean, look, I sometimes feel the need to defend Prince Harry, but I sometimes think it might be best if he sticks to what he knows. I know his intention is often to do good and to support British people now after everything that's gone on. But I do think perhaps he could use his platform for other things. It almost feels that with Harry and Meghan, whatever the biggest cause is, they seem to jump behind instead of maybe thinking, what actually can we do? What do we have experience in? But this is the thing now, celebrities are not just one thing anymore. They have to be these 360 brands. They have to reach into politics. They have to reach into what's going on in the zeitgeist. They can't just anymore, I don't think they're sort of allowed to as such, be really good at one thing. They have to be able to sort of, you know, not, like I say, staying in your lane. If you're a really great actor, be a great actor and talk about acting and actors' rights and helping other people.
But don't cross over to politics. Rebecca Toomey, thank you very much.
Thanks, Rebecca. Up next, the World Health Organization declares a national emergency as monkeypox, also known as Mpox now, has spread across Europe. You're with Britain's Newsroom on GB News. Back in a sec.
Every Saturday, 10 till 12, we'll bring you all of the news that you need to know. We'll also remind you there is so much to smile about.
It's my favourite time of the week. I get to relax, enjoy some light-hearted stories, and let Ellie teach me about fashion too.
That's Saturday Morning Live, every Saturday, 10 till 12.
Only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Headliners. Tomorrow's papers tonight. Every night from 11 p.m.
Bad news for Liberal mothers who want to score virtue points by transitioning their kids, Lewis.
You know, this
tell us what it is.
Is that California dad is granted full custody of 4-year-old son after boy's mom tried to raise the child non-binary.
It's almost like cult-like behaviour. You've got the mother transitioning and then the transitioning the son as well. It's interesting that, you know, it's almost like a religion. You get, you know, if you're a Christian, your kids are probably going to be Christian. If you're, you know, Hindu, your kids are probably going to be Hindu. And if you're transgender, your kids are probably going to be transgender.
There's absolutely a causation there. We see plenty of times in videos. This is exactly it. Like, and also we see the children of celebrities and people in particularly sort of liberal environments. It doesn't happen in some village in Indonesia or whatever. Yeah. Anyway, so yeah, there's no such thing as a trans child. There's no such thing as non-binary. What there is are people with mental health issues and parents who want a virtual signal and also want to brainwash their children. This is an egregious example of that, where she was basically taking him to Disneyland, but he couldn't get on a ride unless he wore princess shoes. I mean, really evil, horrible stuff. You know, forced to wear a dress on his birthday. You know, just really nasty stuff. Now, here's the thing. You talk about the court going to him. No, that's not what happened. He took 800 pages of documentary evidence. He took 8 hours of police body camera footage showing this mental behaviour from the mother. And guess what? The courts ruled that the mum got him. They ruled against him. The only reason that he got custody of his child is because, thank God, a child protective services officer randomly got involved, looked into it themselves, and that's how he eventually got custody of the child. So the courts in America are utterly captured.
GB News, the People's Channel.
We're proud to be GB News, the People's Channel, and as you know, we always love to hear your views. Now, there's a new way of getting in touch with us at gbnews.com/your say. By commenting, you can be part of a live conversation and join our GB News community. You can even talk to me, Bev Turner, or any of the members of the GB News family.
I'm Christopher Hope. From pop stars to politicians, I'll interview anybody in a pub who's got a political opinion. Join me every Friday on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube or gbnews.com, or wherever you get your podcasts. This is GB News, the People's Channel.
Welcome back. 10:50, you're with Ben and Nana on Britain's Newsroom, only on GB News.
Now, the World Health Organization has declared a fresh outbreak of Mpox, formerly known as monkeypox, a global emergency.
And there have been almost 15,000 cases in the Democratic Republic of Congo, with more than 500 deaths. And the variant has now hit Europe, with Sweden recording their first case.
Well, to discuss this further, we're joined by pharmacist and health commentator Thorin Govid. Thorin, OK, so tell us, what is monkeypox and how is it contracted?
OK, well, I mean, it's a rare infection. It's mostly found in West or Central Africa. And what people may not know is it's passed on by person to person, and it can be through physical contact with the Mpox blisters or scabs, and it can be touching clothing, bedding or towels used by someone with Mpox. I think, personally, I think it's something that we need to obviously be aware of, but it's something that I don't think we need to be worrying about. We just need to be conscious of it particularly for those working in healthcare environments, we're going to be on the alert for people who may have symptoms like a high temperature, headache, muscle aches, and it's quite a very distinct rash as well.
Well, this particular strain, though, is slightly more deadly than the one before, because this one you've had 15,000 cases and 500 deaths, yet the previous one's very, very small proportion of deaths. So what's the difference? Why is this one more worrying?
Well, we're obviously keeping an eye on it. I think in terms of this can sometimes be confused with chicken pox. We are obviously very looking at how it's presenting in people. As I say, for people, it's going to be those who have had close contact with those who have or might have Mpox in sort of the last 3 weeks. We'd be telling them to contact their GP. And we need to think about recent travel to West or Central Africa in the past 3 weeks as well. I think the World Health Organization are keeping an eye on this quite rightly. And that, as you've alluded to, there was an outbreak last year as well that was being dealt with.
Thorin, can you sympathise with viewers or people who say, look, we've just come off the back of COVID, it is what it is, COVID happens, there were lots of controversy around COVID, maybe some fear-mongering going on amidst the deaths and so on. Can you sympathise with people who see this monkeypox stuff now and just think, whatever, I don't care, another one, really?
Well, I mean, absolutely. I can understand that when people hear about, viruses, they can be feeling a bit frustrated and thinking back to, how we dealt with COVID, etc. But what I would say is that generally in England, this is sort of low risk. People it's caused by Mpox is caused by similar virus to smallpox, and some people are offered the Mpox vaccine. So the people who are sort of more likely to be exposed to it are healthcare workers caring for patients with confirmed or suspected Mpox, men who are gay, bisexual, or who have sex with other men and have multiple partners, people who've been in close contact with someone with Mpox. So really, what we're saying, the best way to, I think, the message from this actually is make sure that everyone is having good sexual health testing. If you're in those high-risk groups, then obviously you may be offered a vaccine. I know in London and Manchester there are some vaccination programmes available because of sort of the areas. But I think really I wouldn't be panicking about this. I think it's something that healthcare professionals are going to be keeping a close eye on, and we're going to be monitoring the situation.
All right, very, very briefly, we've got about 10 seconds. Should people consider getting the vaccine?
The vaccine, as I say there, it's a select cohort.
Yes or no? Very, very
risk.
briefly, because we're running out of time. Do you think people should consider doing that?
If you're in the eligible groups, and it is being offered in certain areas, so in those higher risk groups, yes.
All right, Thorin Govan, thank you very much. Stay tuned. Weather is next.
A brighter outlook with Box Solar, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Good morning. Welcome to your latest GB News weather update, brought to you from the Met Office. Sunny spells for many of us today. Still some rain to clear the far southeast, however, and it's going to be pretty breezy across the northwest. There's a risk of a few showers as well up here, but this rain may just take a couple of more hours to clear the far south and east. But once it does so, many of us will see a dry and fine rest of today, away from the showers across the far north of Scotland, where we do have that brisk breeze. So up in these areas, it will be a slightly fresh day. Temperatures in the mid-teens, a little below average for the time of year. Elsewhere, though, it'll feel quite warm in that sunshine. Temperatures climbing towards the mid-20s across the southeast, but widely into the low 20s for many areas in the west as well. There's very little change as we head into Friday evening as well as into the weekend. Showers will persist for some western areas of Scotland. They don't look particularly heavy, but I think they will continue to push throughout the weekend. Drier towards Northern Ireland, particularly across eastern areas of Northern Ireland and much of Northern England as well as Wales, seeing a fine end to the week after the rather unsettled week we have seen this week. And temperatures still in the 20s to end the day. Temperatures will fall away quite quickly overnight, though, as clear skies develop quite widely, particularly across England and Wales, but also into Northern Ireland, some areas of Scotland later on in the night. So quite widely we'll be down into the single figures rurally. A much fresher night for most of us compared to the nights we've had so far this week. So rurally down into single figures, some towns and cities just staying at around 11 or 12 degrees. The strength of the breeze across parts of Scotland will hold temperatures up here as well. And that breeze will remain fairly brisk through much of Saturday and actually into Sunday too. But for many of us, Saturday is looking like a dry day. Limited sunshine across western areas. The best of sunshine will be across eastern areas of the UK, and here temperatures will climb once again to the mid-20s, possibly the lower 20s for parts of eastern Scotland and eastern Northern Ireland. See you again soon. Bye-bye.
That warm feeling inside from Boxed Boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Celebrate a spectacular summer with your chance to win an incredible £30,000 in tax-free cash in our Great British Giveaway. It's the biggest prize of the year so far, and it's totally tax-free. What would you spend that on? Luxury holidays, a new car, or just put it away for a rainy day? Whatever you do with £30,000 in tax-free cash, make sure you don't miss out on the chance to make it yours. For another chance to win £30,000 in tax-free cash, text cash to 63232. Text costs £2 plus one standard network rate message. You can enter online at gbnews.com/win. Entries cost £2, or post your name and number to GB07 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 5 p.m. on the 30th of August. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
Good afternoon, Britain. Your lunchtime update on the stories that matter across the UK.
From breaking news and insightful analysis, inspiring stories and lively debates. Are you comparing yourself to a former Prime Minister?
Which is it? Stay informed, stay updated, stay entertained.
I just don't know how anyone would not want to be there.
Every weekday from midday.
We are Good Afternoon Britain, only on GB News.
Britain's news channel.
Welcome to State of the Nation, daily plunge into the stories shaping our country. I'm Jacob Rees-Mogg, and Monday to Thursday we bring you the insights, the facts, the truth about how our country is being governed. Because what happens in Downing Street matters down your street. Tune in to State of the Nation every Monday to Thursday, 8 to 9 o'clock. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, for a frank and honest discussion with those in power that cuts through the spin and gets to the heart of the issues shaping our nation.
You haven't confirmed that you want to stand as leader, but you haven't ruled it out either.
This report basically says that he's not fit to stand trial. Is he indecisive? Incompetent?
I deliver the dose of reality Westminster needs. That's the Camilla Tominey Show at 9:30 every Sunday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel. Hi there, I'm Michelle Dewberry and I'm going to take a second to tell you all about my show, Dubes & Co. We start off with the issues of the day. We then bring in both sides of the arguments. We get rid of the disrespect. And then you throw me into the mix. And trust me, I'll tell it exactly how it is. And then, of course, the magic ingredient, you at home. We mix it all together and what have we got, in my opinion, the best debate show in town. Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Good morning to you, hope you're well. It's 11 a.m. on Friday the 16th of August, live across the UK. This is Britain's Newsroom with Ben Leo and Nana Akweer.
Defiant Priti Patel, as Dame Priti Patel blown her chances of becoming the next Tory leader after refusing to apologise for sky-high migration figures. She spoke exclusively to GB News.
What about all those international students? They came in after the pandemic. Are we saying that they should not have come into the country? So
Brought their families there, didn't they, on your watch?
The system, no, actually, no.
The infected blood scandal. Has justice been delivered? Thousands of victims of the worst scandal in NHS history are finally set to receive financial support for life.
As Taylor Swift's Eras tour returns to Wembley for 5 shows in London, she reaches out privately to victims' families of that devastating knife attack in Southport.
And train drivers triumph. Not only has the government offered them a bumper pay rise, we'll tell you about the so-called Spanish practices that are still being allowed too.
The cost of clean energy. We have a report looking at what the impact is of going green may have on the city of Aberdeen. Are you a fan of this green energy thing?
Yes.
Solar panels, have you got solar panels?
Yeah, I'm building a solar farm in my back garden. I'm getting an electric vehicle. I'm not eating meat. I'm not using anything to do with oil. And I may even go and sit down in the Mall and process just off oil soon.
I'm afraid I don't believe you.
No, joking. No. And I'll tell you what else is a joke. In Aberdeen, you know, a city built so richly on North Sea oil, you know, so many jobs up there, thousands of jobs, so much money, a big economy, and they're destroying it.
Well, they're getting rid of the so-called oil and gas, aren't they? New oil and gas licences. And they're talking about having green jobs, which won't come into play for many years. I mean, it's ridiculous.
No.
What are the people going to do in the meantime? Eat grass?
Yeah. the whole net zero thing. We had Jim Dale, was it last week, saying that, I've travelled to Thailand on my plane.
Well, he was in Thailand, wasn't he, when he was...
Yeah, because I'm going to plant a tree to offset my carbon. It's just like, come on.
We know it's a scam. Offsetting, you don't get the so-called benefits until hundreds and hundreds of years later, so it's nonsense, if there is even any benefit. As ever, send us your thoughts, post your comments, gbnews.com/your say. But first, let's get your latest news with Cameron Walker.
Good morning. It's 2 minutes past 11. I'm Cameron Walker here in the GB Newsroom. Victims of the infected blood scandal can receive support scheme payments for life under changes to a multi-billion-pound compensation plan. Meanwhile, those who are subjected to unethical research will get up to £15,000 extra. That's after the government accepted the majority of recommendations from an independent review into planned compensation for victims. Some 3,000 people across the UK are estimated to have registered interest with the compensation scheme. Ministers have been accused of prioritising unions over pensioners. That's according to The Times. Tens of thousands more rail workers are set to get above-inflation pay rises, which is expected to cost the Treasury more than £100 million. The Treasury Secretary, Louise Hay, says the pay rises are better value for taxpayers than allowing train strikes to continue. But it's been claimed the terms offered to ASLEF union members could have a knock-on effect with other rail unions. And sticking with ASLEF, there's some breaking news in the last few minutes. Train drivers on Liner are to stage a series of strikes claiming a breakdown in industrial relations and the breaking of agreements by the company. That is what ASLEF Union has just announced in the last few minutes. More on that as we get it. In other news, Foreign Secretary David Lammy has arrived in Jerusalem with his French counterpart Stéphane Séjourné to urge a ceasefire in the war in Gaza. It's the first joint UK-France visit to the region in over a decade, where the ministers are expected to visit the occupied Palestinian territories as well. Lammy and Séjourné are expected to stress that there is no time for delays or excuses from all parties on a ceasefire deal. And in other news, Prince Harry's appeared to subtly weigh in on recent riots in the UK, which were partly sparked by online misinformation. The Duke and Duchess of Sussex have used their first day of their official visits to Colombia to highlight online safety, where Harry said, and I quote, "What happens online within a matter of minutes transfers to the streets, and people are acting on information that isn't true." The couple were officially invited by the country's Vice President, Francia Marquez, who says she was moved by their controversial Netflix documentary where they laid bare their troubled relationship with the royal family, leading to their eventual departure as working royals. Well, during a panel discussion talking about online misinformation, Prince Harry suggested education could help the public spot fake news.
A lot of people are scared and uncertain, and I think one of the solutions to that is education and awareness, because it's becoming harder and harder to stem the flow from the source, and therefore really it comes down to all of us to be able to spot the true from the fake.
The number of pharmacies in England could fall below 10,000 for the first time in almost 2 decades. That's a warning from the National Pharmacy Association, which claims 7 pharmacies a week have so far closed this year. Cuts to budgets and medicine becoming more expensive have been blamed. If the numbers fall below 10,000, it will be the lowest number since 2005. A cliff-edge return to commercial bus fares in England could be around the corner after the government refused to commit to extending the £2 cap. Since January last year, a single bus fare in England has been capped at £2, something bus companies say is vital for young people to enhance their access to education and jobs. The government is working with the industry to find a solution. Health officials are preparing for any potential cases of a new strain of Mpox after the World Health Organization declared outbreaks of the virus in Africa a global emergency. The strain, known as Clade 1b, emerged in the Democratic Republic of the Congo. There are currently no cases of the virus in the UK, but cases have spread as far as Sweden. More than 500 people in Africa have died from the disease so far this year. 2 doctors and 3 others, including a personal assistant to actor Matthew Perry, have been charged with supplying the Friends star with ketamine. The assistant has since pleaded guilty. The powerful sedative caused the actor's death from a drug overdose nearly a year ago. The US Attorney General says the defendants, including a woman known in Los Angeles as the Ketamine Queen, were part of a criminal network that gave the drugs to Perry and others. US Attorney Martin Estrada claims the defendants took advantage of the Friends star.
These defendants took advantage of Mr. Perry's addiction issues to enrich themselves. They knew what they were doing was wrong. They knew what they were doing was risking great danger to Mr. Perry, but they did it anyways.
Well, those are the latest GB News headlines for now. I'm Cameron Walker. Now back to Ben and Nana.
For the very latest GB News direct to your smartphone, sign up to News Alerts by scanning the QR code or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
Thank you, Cameron. Hello and welcome. Just coming up to 8 minutes after 11 o'clock. This is Britain's Newsroom, live across the United Kingdom on GB News with Ben Leo and me, Nana Acquia.
Interesting bulletin from our Cameron Walker there. David Lammy being sent to the Middle East to, for once and for all, solve the centuries-long conflicts.
Good luck with that.
David Lammy. There we go.
Yeah. Well, look, lots of you have been getting in touch with your thoughts. gbnews.com/your say. I've got this one from Janet. She says, Ben and Nana, great team, plain spoken and take no nonsense.
Mark says, I'm sick of the fear porn all the time. Follow the money, not the science, which has always been a scam. He's talking about monkeypox. And Carol says, yes, Nana, of course we should be worried about monkeypox, as we don't have anyone protecting our borders or our country. I hope you can entice someone from the Home Office to explain.
Well, Shirley Roberts has similar sentiment. She said the first job of our government is to ensure the safety of people. The government has prior warning of the risks. Therefore, if monkeypox enters this country via someone on a small boat, the people should get together and sue the government for not doing its most basic of jobs. That's her view on that. What else have I got?
Call me battle-hardened through COVID. I don't care. Doesn't move me at all. Doesn't alert any spidey sensors. Doesn't alert any, threat sensors. I just monkeypox, one case in Sweden. I don't care. What is it? I don't care. Sorry.
Well, no, I think sometimes though we do trivialise some of these things, and I often think that sometimes we think, oh, it's because it's fine, it's in the UK, we can handle it. It won't be handled as well in an African country. But I actually think that on this, they have some pretty nasty viruses that come out, in particular that area, isn't it? It seems the Democratic Republic of Congo. Even to a lot of viruses, and I do care.
Even if it was a nasty virus, and I really don't know, but the problem is that COVID really just blew up all sort of trust in the health establishment and anything else. So the government, at least, and the NHS have a real problem in this country trying to win over lots of people who, during COVID, were, you know, they just lost all trust and faith in the health establishment.
Well, you've also got things like the infected blood scandal and things like that put people off, people within the NHS and those sort of echelons of power. But I do feel that this is quite important in terms of monkeypox, and that there is a trusted vaccine out there that we know of, and many people, in particular people who are gay and bisexual, had vaccinations for monkeypox last year.
Yes.
So if it became something, I would definitely do it. Let's see what else we got. June says, I think that there is... with all that was proved to be misinformation in Harry's book and TV interviews, he is the last one to criticise anyone, albeit to give out misinformation. Violence and riots is unacceptable. He needs to take a good look in the mirror at himself.
Yeah, as Nigel Farage has become a meme. Boring. Boring. Don't care about Harry and Meghan.
But these are the thoughts of the viewers. So I'm really...
I know, that's my view.
So, you know,
Thank you for your views. That's mine. I don't care about Harry and Meghan. We sussed them out years ago. They are massive hypocrites, and I'm not giving them any more of my energy.
Right. Well, let's talk about net zero, because that's all about energy. Britain's journey to net zero is well underway. But could cities like Aberdeen get left behind in the clean green switch?
Aberdeen, of course, has long been a hub for the British offshore energy sector, but the decline in oil and gas over the last 20 years has had a knock-on effect on jobs and the housing market. Tony Maguire has this report.
Aberdeen is home from home for offshore industry workers, but since 2006, a downturn in oil and gas has led to a collapse in the city's housing market, wiping away more than one-third from the average property value. Vince Spangenberg, an estate agent at the heart of Aberdeen, says the uncertain future of the offshore energy sector means buy-to-let landlords have run out of fight in an increasingly difficult housing market.
Oil and gas seems to be not as prevalent anymore as what it was at one time. You've got the windfall tax, which hasn't helped. You also tend to find as well that the recent increase in mortgage rates has made a huge difference as well. We do have landlords now who are actively selling up because they can't afford to actually keep the property on the market anymore. And that has meant that there's not as many properties available, unfortunately, for renting.
Elected on their green energy agenda, Labour has yet to unveil if Aberdeen is in the running to headquarter GB Energy.
GB Energy.
Great British Energy.
GB Energy.
GB Energy, a publicly owned energy generation company.
The headquarters here in Scotland.
The pledge to refuse new oil and gas licences has some 200,000 North Sea workers wondering where they fit in to Labour's greener future. Now the 900-year-old port of Aberdeen has had to set its sights firmly on the next energy boom. Following a £420 million expansion project to facilitate ships servicing offshore wind farms, the port has now announced its shore power project, supplying up to 20% of its 7,000 yearly berths with clean electricity, cutting quayside emissions by 90%. Port CEO Bob Sanguinetti says Aberdeen can be to clean energy what it was for oil and gas 50 years ago.
I was struck when I first arrived in Aberdeen about the enthusiasm for the energy sector and for energy transition. So very much not sitting on its hands and not dwelling on the past, but looking at how to champion the energy transition in order to continue acting as the key logistics hub for the offshore energy sector as we make the transition from fossil fuels through to renewables.
Aberdeen's 50 years in oil and gas has already shown us innovation creates jobs, jobs need workers, and workers need housing. Time will tell if green energy is the tonic to Aberdeen's property woes. But if any city should be adept at capitalising on its natural resources, few would bet against the Granite City. Tony Maguire, GB News, Aberdeen.
So, a great report from Tony there. So, is Britain braced for net zero, or will it destroy our economy? Richard Bartlett is the director of Export Unlocked. Richard, we've heard the passage to net zero. The uncertainty is meaning that people are selling up. There are people in the oil and gas industry that are uncertain about their jobs. And you can see that Aberdeen looks as though it is becoming a bit of a ghost town in terms of employment when they have natural resources right there. Is this the right direction?
Well, unfortunately, we're in the world of green, as we know. But actually, is it the right for Aberdeen and Scotland in general? And the UK, if you look at it? I think this is a big challenge. I mean, I was looking at some GDP just to give you some examples, which wasn't mentioned on there. And it accounts for about 12% of the Scottish economy, which is huge. And when you start these transitions, going from fossil to renewable, we know this is something that's going to be happening. You really need to look at Aberdeen as a source. There's lots of talk in Aberdeen on the people in the oil and gas sectors. Why don't you train us? Why don't you give us the opportunity to train in this environment instead of just pumping money into things that it's just money being pumped into things when it actually accounts for about 1% of global CO2s, the UK. So, I mean, it's not a huge contribution to the world economy. But interestingly, it's a challenge. And one of the big challenges we're going to see with everything what's happening within trade and everything else around the world, I think Aberdeen's a perfect example where the UK Labour government could actually invest in Aberdeen and actually, 196,000 jobs there. It's a big challenge. And what would happen if 100,000 jobs, which obviously the Chamber of Commerce have mentioned in Aberdeen, the effect it could have on just not only we're seeing on the housing industry and the housing market, on the actual economy and the Scottish economy is huge.
Richard, you said yourself that the UK is responsible for around 1% of global CO2 emissions. So, I'm just going to be frank with it. What's the point of all this when China's building the equivalent of 4 coal power stations a week?
Yeah, I mean, you trying to convince me, Ben, is probably the opposite way. I totally agree. Obviously, we've got to look at things and look at how we're going to look at it. But you've got to be sensible about this. You've got to look at how does it affect jobs within we already know we've had this inflation, we've had lots of things within everything and the supply chain, everything around there. 1% is a small amount. Yes, we know we have to work on it. Somebody will argue, say, well, that's not quite right. Well, I've actually done the figures on this. We actually contribute on our GVA per capita is around 4.7%, which is slightly higher, but still, we're actually, since 1991, have actually been declining. We've been declining on our CO2 emissions. So I'm with you on that, Ben. But obviously, if we're talking about Aberdeen in general and just the UK, we've got to look at renewable energy as a kind of an add-on, not replace it as an add-on of how you can do things. We'll do it over a period of time, 10, 15, 20 years, so we can brace ourselves ready for them challenges, not destroy jobs overnight and then have a huge effect, like, remember the coal mining and things like that, has a huge effect on the industry.
You see, that's what I was thinking of. I was thinking about the coal miners and how a lot of the northeastern towns ended up being ghost towns because there's nothing else for the people to do. And the point that was made in there was that who's going to do these jobs as well, these green jobs? Because often when these companies come, they bring their own people or they teach other people. Where is the training, if they're going to go in this direction, for the operatives that will run this net zero green job situation? I mean, I don't know what they'll be doing.
Yeah, and I agree now. I mean, what you could do as a Labour government, they could play the cards right here. They could invest in training. They could put a policy in place, invest in training over a 3 to 5 year period, but actually retrain the people who are actually in the industry itself. And then, if they can't replace that, then go out, obviously as they start to increase, go out to the wider market. But actually people who are going to invest into renewable energies, which always tends to be incoming investment, that part of the deal is to actually invest in the oil and gas, in the actual working environment first. That's my take on it. And Labour could really, they need to announce this. They seem to be sitting on the fence, talking. Actually come out with something and say, we've got a plan, this is our plan. Yes, do we agree? Whether we agree or not here today, it is coming and we have to accept that there are going to be challenges there.
Well, Richard, remember what happened to their last green energy pledge, the 28 billion, that sort of disappeared into the ether. Richard Bartlett, thank you very much. He's the director of Export Unlocked.
Interesting. Right, up next, Economic crisis. What economic crisis? That's what the Daily Mail was saying this morning. So much for an economic crisis. They've inherited, the Labour government, another great set of economic figures from the outgoing Tory party. Has Rachel Reeves been entirely straight with the electorate? We'll find out next. We are, apparently now, the fastest growing economy in the G7. Who'd have thunk it, eh?
Well, it's not really saying much, to be honest. They're going like the snail's pace.
This is Britain's Newsroom on GB News. Back in a tick.
I'm Patrick Christie's. Every weeknight from 9, I bring you 2 hours of unmissable, explosive debate and headline-grabbing interviews. What impact has that had?
We got death threats and the bomb threat and so on.
As time passes,
She could have saved Storm.
you made my argument for me.
My guests and I tackle the issues that really matter with a sharp take on every story.
Went everywhere.
Something practical could be done.
Or I can become something different. Patrick Christie's tonight from 9 p.m. only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
With record temperatures expected this week, how do zoos keep their cooler creatures cold? Well, at Yorkshire Wildlife Park, the polar bears are enjoying a vegetable ice block.
Polar bears, they do have quite a variety of different temperatures that they naturally do find. Once they're moving off these polar ice caps, they are in the likes of down in the areas of Canada, Hudson Bay. Naturally, they were finding polar bears in 35-degree temperatures year upon year. So they are very much used to warm temperatures and heat waves as such. What you'll tend to find is they'll go for a good swim and then go for a snooze in the shade thereafter.
Not wanting to miss out, the sea lions are treated to a huge fish lolly.
In the hot weather, it's really important to give them ice because these guys, they don't drink salt water. These pools are actually saltwater pools. They actually drink fresh water. They've got 2 freshwater pools in their house, but again, being able to provide that in their outside enclosure is also really important. So offering them ice with their fish is not only enriching, but it's actually beneficial to their welfare as well.
Other animals like the lemurs will be basking in the sun, but also cooling down with frozen sweet potato.
So we've got 3 different species of lemur here. They come in all different shapes, colours, sizes, but they are native to Madagascar. Madagascar can get quite hot, understandably, so throughout the cold months here in Yorkshire, we do give them a nice heated house all year round, but especially making sure it's nice and warm in the winter for them. And it does mean that in the hot spells as well that we're able to keep our eyes on them and try and give them things that make them a bit more comfortable with that incoming hot weather as well.
The frozen food on offer here certainly has the seal of approval on what could be the hottest day of the year.
GB News, the People's Channel.
Are the newspapers getting you down?
My wife didn't divorce me that month.
Struggling to separate the wheat from the chaff?
I know that it's a bit of a circus at the best of times.
Well, don't worry. Headliners has got you covered. We'll take the burden of reading the day's news, and if we get depressed, who cares? It's an occupational hazard, frankly. That's Headliners on GB News from 11 p.m. till midnight, and the following morning, 5 till 6 a.m. on GB News, the comedy channel. Nah, just kidding. Britain's news channel.
Good morning, 22 minutes after 11 o'clock. This is Britain's Newsroom with Ben, Leo and me, Nana Acquia.
Morning. We're joined also by former Labour advisor Matthew Larser and political commentator Emma Webb in the studio. I said before the break, I showed you this Daily Mail front page for our viewers at home and the listeners on radio. Can we get the Daily Mail front page up? It says, so much for an economic crisis. Chancellor Rachel Reeves came under fire last night after her doom-laden claims about the Tories' economic legacy were left in tatters. And that's off the back that latest evidence of the UK's robust recovery. Figures showed that growth this year is the fastest in the G7, and the last 6 months of growth of GDP is the fastest in 7 years. So Emma Webb, combined with this £20 billion mystery black hole, is Rachel Reeves telling us the full truth?
I would say not, given that she was definitely aware of that so-called black hole beforehand. She would have had sight of that. But, you know, what economic crisis? Well, not yet, because the Labour Party are living off the family silver from the previous government. Rishi Sunak must be absolutely kicking himself right now.
What in LA, in his five-star restaurant? I think he's eating.
Lounging under the American
I think he's kicking
sun.
himself.
But
this is obviously the legacy of the Conservative government. The Labour Party have inherited a much stronger economy than they claim to have inherited. But also, you asked whether or not Rachel Reeves is telling porky pies. Well, they repeatedly said over and over again they wouldn't raise taxes. And now we're all expecting an announcement in the budget.
Well, on working people,
defense,
on working people,
but that's just an attack.
Pensioners don't work.
But their understanding of working people seems to be people who don't have any savings. But many working people do have savings. They try very hard to accumulate those savings so they have a security net. And if they don't have that, well, they're dependent on the state, which is very convenient for socialists. But, you know, ultimately, it seems to be an attack on people who are being financially responsible by saving and not living on breadline.
No, well, I don't think that there's going to be an increase in the tax on ordinary savings. There might be an increase in capital gains tax, because but that affects a very small number of people. And capital gains tax is very unfair at the moment because basically people are taxed more on income, because if you don't equalise the rates, it means that if you make more from...
But hang on, Matthew, that wealth from capital gains, from assets, stocks, shares, investments, that wealth is earned at a very big risk from the investors.
Absolutely.
Why should the government come along like some ancient thief, like a bunch of commies, come along and say, thanks very much for your...
harsh there, Ben.
No, it's absolutely true. Thanks very much for your educated risk and your gamble, putting your money on the line, and I'm going to take a massive chunk of that.
Well,
thanks
you
very
could
much.
say the same thing. Why does the government come and take a chunk out of everybody's pay packet, because it pays for the services?
It does.
It does. And exactly. And it does that for the services that we all rely on. And therefore, capital gains should be at the same rate as income tax, because that means that everybody's being taxed at the same rate no matter where their income comes from, whether it comes from traditional work or from capital.
But you do realise, and things like inheritance tax, capital gains tax, those who are in the know can easily avoid paying it. So the only real people that are taxed are really the people in the middle there, who will feel the brunt of it. And actually, as Ben says, for being prudent, for saving money, for saving for your retirement, you are literally penalised under this government.
No, I think that you're right about people avoiding it, and that's why clamping down on avoidance is important. Although some people always find a way, but I think it's about fairness in the tax system.
How is it fair?
You know, in terms of not having gained, in terms of the economic legacy, growth was better than expected, but the Tories were still not balancing the books. They were still spending more than they could. And I spoke to a friend in the Treasury the other day who literally says you open a drawer and you find out there's another unfunded spending commitment. They were paying for the asylum policy out of the reserves.
Spending commitments there will be in the end. I mean, just look at all these public sector pay rises, and the Labour government are insisting now that this isn't going to cause a sort of gold rush for more people wanting public sector pay rises, but the GPs now want 11%. It looks like it's going to be 9.4 billion in public sector pay rises, and that doesn't include the 1 billion for junior doctors. That is British taxpayers' money, and it's the same as with the VAT raid on private schools. We've just seen one Catholic school has had to close down because of this VAT. So it affects not the Eatons, the Harrows and the Winchesters, not the people who are at the absolute top of the economic ladder. It affects the middle class. It affects people who are upwardly mobile, and it stagnates social mobility. So in classic Labour Party fashion, taking certain measures in the name of equality, but the reality is that it's actually punishing those who are aspirational, punishing those who work really hard for a better life.
But who voted for these people? I mean, like 20% of the electorate voted for them. They must have been in that exact area that you're talking about.
Well, if the polls are anything to go by, looking at the Westminster voting intention, people are already really regretting voting for Labour.
We'll see. I mean, obviously the last couple of weeks have been difficult for the government with the riots on the streets, but Rachel was absolutely clear that income tax and national insurance are not going to rise, and that includes income tax on savings.
All that will happen is people with money, high net worth individuals who pay a lot into the tax system, they'll just say, I'm not having this anymore. I'm not being fleeced by a bunch of commies. I'm going to go to Dubai where the sun shines all the time, the sea's nice, and I don't get taxed.
They'll make the argument with the unions that, we have to give them this because otherwise they'll cost so much to the economy, but don't make that that argument when it comes to the people who would pay the highest amount of tax just simply leaving because they're mobile, they can just go elsewhere.
It seems very old-fashioned, doesn't it, to the train networks, as far as I can see. Whilst they are still very important, they have lost a lot of their relevance anyway. So a lot of people finding alternative ways of doing things, and it's become a more business-to-business type service. So I think I can't understand these massive pay rises. But let's move on to Joe Biden.
Yeah, he's been seen, he's been campaigned, he's had his first campaign stop, as they call it in America, with Kamala. He's fighting because they've just done a deal in America. So here in Britain, and in fact in most other countries, the health service negotiates the price of pharmaceuticals centrally and fixes a price. And then, but in America, they haven't been doing that. So basically, the drug companies make all their money in America. But at last, the Biden administration has managed to do a deal to fix the price of the 10 top selling prescription drugs. In some cases, it's going to save 79%, and that's an overall saving of $6 billion for American consumers. And they had good news on American inflation yesterday, which has fallen. So. At the moment,
only just,
but at the moment it's moving in the right direction for Harris, and so the mojo continues for now. But obviously, who knows what's going to come down the line?
More Kamala mania. I would think that probably being supported by Joe Biden at this point would go against her, if anything, put a dampener on all of the sort of Kamala mania. But she recently raised record numbers of funds to back her campaign. And closed the gap a bit on Trump, but yeah, we'll see. I don't make wages, but I don't think the next government in America is going to be a Democrat.
Oh, I was going to offer you a wage.
I just want to ask you about Gales, because Gales customers are told they're going to pay £1 extra for day-old croissants.
Now, so can we just confirm for viewers who don't know, because the Gales they're not like Greggs all over the nation. Gales is a sort of high-end, very expensive bakery where you pay £4-5 for a croissant.
Yeah, it's like the Gilded Waitrose of bakeries.
Yeah.
I'm a big Gales fan, so I don't want to make it seem like I'm not on commission, though. If Gales wanted to pay me to represent them in some way, I wouldn't say no. But I'm joking. But they have this.
You wouldn't say that's a few free croissants.
I wouldn't say no. I'm a big Gales fan, but they have this. This waste not programme where they use excess foodstuffs to make other products. They do it with their babkas. They have these little things called Soho buns that are made of old pain au chocolat. And so this story, lots of people are very angry because they're using old croissants to make a new reconstituted almond and chocolate croissant, and they're charging an extra 95 pence for this, which is effectively made out of day-old croissant. Now, I actually would defend them against the haters because they have to go through the process of remaking the thing. So I think actually, financially, it makes sense for them to charge.
They could give it away, couldn't they?
And if you're shopping at Gales and you're willing to pay such a large amount of money for it, then fair enough. It's if not, go to Greggs.
Other bakeries are available.
Emma, where Matthew does, so thank you very much. Right, time to get your latest news with Cameron Walker.
Nana, thank you. It's 11:31. I'm Cameron Walker here in the GB Newsroom. Victims of the infected blood scandal can receive support scheme payments for life under changes to a multi-billion-pound compensation plan. Apologies for that, I am still here. Meanwhile, those who were subjected to unethical research will get up to £15,000 extra. That's after the government accepted the majority of recommendations from an independent review into planned compensation for victims. Some 3,000 people across the UK are estimated to have registered interest with the compensation scheme. Ministers have been accused of prioritising unions over pensioners, according to The Times. Tens of thousands more rail workers are set to get above-inflation pay rises, which is expected to cost the Treasury more than £100 million. The Transport Secretary, Louise Hay, says the pay rises are better value for taxpayers than allowing train strikes to continue. But some claim the terms offered to ASLEF union members could have a knock-on effect with other rail unions. And in the last hour, ASLEF has announced train drivers on LNER are to stage a series of strikes on this separate issue of apparent breakdowns in industrial relations and the breaking of agreements by the company. Foreign Secretary David Lammy has arrived in Jerusalem with his French counterpart Stéphane Séjourné to urge a ceasefire in the war in Gaza. It's the first UK-France visit to the region in over a decade, where the ministers are expected to visit the occupied Palestinian territories too. Lammy and Séjourné are expected to stress that, and I quote, "there is no time for delays or excuses from all parties on a ceasefire deal." Prince Harry's appeared to subtly weigh in on the recent riots in the UK, which were partly sparked by online misinformation. The Duke and Duchess of Sussex have used their first day of their official visits to Colombia to highlight online safety, where Harry said, and I quote, "what happens online within a matter of minutes transfers to the streets, and people are acting on information that isn't true." The number of pharmacies in England could fall below 10,000 for the first time in almost 20 years. That's a warning from the National Pharmacy Association, which claims 7 pharmacies a week have so far closed this year. Cuts to budgets and medicine becoming more expensive has been blamed. If numbers fall below 10,000, it will be the lowest number since 2005. And 2 doctors and 3 others, including a personal assistant to actor Matthew Perry, have been charged with supplying the Friends star with ketamine. The assistant has since pleaded guilty. The powerful sedative caused the actor's death from a drug overdose nearly a year ago. The US Attorney General says the defendants, including a woman known in Los Angeles as the ketamine queen, were part of a criminal network that gave the drugs to Perry, as well as others. Well, those are the latest GB News headlines for now. I'm Cameron Walker. More in half an hour.
For the very latest GB News direct to your smartphone, sign up to News Alerts by scanning the QR code or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
Cheers Britannia Wine Club proudly sponsors the GB News Financial Report.
Well, here's a quick snapshot of today's markets. The pound will buy you $1.2906 and €1.1743. The price of gold is £1,911.16 per ounce, and the FTSE 100's at 8,311 points.
Cheers Britannia Wine Club proudly sponsors the GB News Financial Report.
Up at noon, good afternoon Britain with Emily and Darren Grimes. Good morning to you both.
Good morning.
What's in your box of tricks this morning?
Well, we've got to follow this double act, and that's a hard thing to do, but we're going to do our very best.
It is a hard thing to do, you know, Darren.
It is.
They're an exceptional pair.
But we want really to get into what's going on in the country as far as illegal immigration is concerned, and the concerns that have been raised, and our very own Mark White, of course, has covered this extensively on this very channel, concerns around apps, food delivery apps in particular, you know, your takeaways and all the rest of it, could be used as a way to make money by illegal migrants, which of course has pull factors into this country.
What do you mean? What do you mean? They're becoming delivery drivers, or?
Exactly, yeah. So they're utilising these apps, getting a login. The Brussels Times said that actually they're using logins from those who aren't illegal migrants and actually making money off the back of their logins and then pocketing the cash as well as getting a free hotel in this country.
So they're not even delivering the food or delivering the meals. They're just...
No, they are.
So they're actually doing the job.
To do that to ultimately make the cash, yeah. But using someone else's login
and staying in a hotel at the same time.
Well,
Nice.
possibly, quite possibly. Now, Yvette Cooper, she sounded very tough when she was talking about cracking down on illegal migration and workers in various industries. She cited nail salons and she cited car washes as places where the illegal immigration raids would take place. But what about the gig economy? What about delivery riders as well? So that we'll get stuck into that, find out a little bit more about that. But also, of course, public sector pay. The train drivers, the government slapping themselves on the back, you know, saying, good stuff, we've got this pay offer done, the strikes will stop, but will there? There's already been another one announced.
Right,
so there you go.
That sounds exciting. All that and more at midday. Up next, the Vice President of Colombia was moved by Harry and Meghan's Netflix documentary for some reason. We'll have the latest from the Sussex's tour. This is Britain's Newsroom on GB News.
Hello, welcome to your latest weather update from the Met Office here on GB News. Some fine weather around today, and for most of us, going to last through the weekend as well. Not too hot, not too cold, most places dry, and seeing some sunshine. We are between weather systems. Well, most of us are, because this one is going to approach the far north of Scotland. It's not going to be completely fine here. There will be showers and quite a brisk and gusty wind at times, particularly tonight. Patchy rain clearing away from the southeast early doors this morning, so now it's fine and bright, sunny spells for the most part. A bit more cloud at times over northern England, Northern Ireland, but generally a fine summer's day with temperatures pretty close to the average. Quite warm still in the southeast, but not as hot as it has been. Obviously feeling cool with the gusty winds and the fairly frequent showers across the Western Isles and the Northern Isles. They'll keep going well into the evening. A few showers over the Highlands, but further south, any showers, I think, few and far between. The odd one possible in the Glasgow area and across Ayrshire. Most of Northern Ireland will stay dry. Again, showers can't be completely ruled out here this evening, but for most of England and Wales, it is going to be a fine day and a fine evening. Not particularly warm. Temperatures will dip away. It's going to be a more comfortable night for certainly much of eastern England, where it has been very warm and humid recently. We'll keep some showers going in northern Scotland. Gets a bit windier actually here as we go through the night as well. So quite a blusterous night across northern Scotland. But elsewhere, the wind's fairly light, and that will allow those temperatures to dip down. Single figures in some rural spots. So, as I said, much cooler than recent nights. So a fresh start to the weekend, but a good-looking day tomorrow, actually. Not as many showers across the Highlands, still one or two maybe over the Northern Isles, still quite breezy here as well, but generally most places dry, fine. Yes, some cloud, but there will be some blue sky as well. And when the sun's out, temperatures generally high teens across the north, mid-20s across the southeast.
If you want your news to be straight talking...
This is a nightmare for the Conservatives again.
Down to earth.
It's not just Nottingham where this is happening, is it?
And most importantly, honest.
Hard-working, middle-class taxpayers, they'll get the book thrown at them.
Then catch me, Martin Daubney, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6 p.m. on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Nana Akweer, for an informative, interactive news programme with a difference. It's fun. It's true. You're not wrong. No one will be cancelled. Lovely. Join me from 3 p.m. every weekend, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Every Saturday, 10 till 12, we'll bring you all of the news that you need to know. We'll also remind you that there is so much to smile about.
It's my favourite time of the week. I get to relax, enjoy some light-hearted stories, and let Ellie teach me about fashion too.
That's Saturday Morning Live, every Saturday, 10 till 12.
Only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Good morning, it's 11:41. This is Britain's Newsroom with Ben Leo and me, Nana Akweer.
Good morning to you, hope you're well. The Duke and Duchess of Sussex, they've been welcomed to Colombia in South America as they begin their 4-day tour of the nation.
Harry and Meghan were met in the capital, Bogota, by Colombia's Vice President, Francia Marquez, and her husband. And the couple attended a forum on our digital future, where both Harry and Meghan spoke. Take a listen.
And for me, the most important place that I sit in the world right now is as a mother. So I look at it through the lens of what my children, our children, are going to adopt as they get older, and how we can keep them safe, because I do believe all of us agree, despite whatever disparities there are throughout the world, no one contests the fact that we want to keep our children safe.
Typical, it started with, and for me. Of course it did.
Meghan Markle. Anyway, we're joined now by royal broadcaster Helena Shard. Good morning, Helena. Thanks for joining us. Some people have a little bit of an issue with Harry and Meghan talking about online safety and promoting all these sort of good kumbaya values, when actually they have been purveyors of their own misinformation in the past, not least with the Oprah interview, was it 2022?
21, I think.
I mean, absolutely. I mean, this has really turned into the Meghan show, from what I can see. I just, you know, we all want to combat cyberbullying and, you know, want online safety for children. That's admirable. And, you know, people that have a platform, it's great to lend themselves to that. But this is just such a huge PR situation. I just don't know how collaborative it is as well. And what I do know that this is, from my point of view, is hugely damaging, I believe, to our royal family. You you know, there's no government input. There's nothing here. Is it the Colombian government that's actually leading everything? We really don't know. And yes, there is such a hypocrisy here with these two. It's the perfect PR. You've got beautiful outfits and great pictures, and it's all incredibly staged. But, you know, when it comes to it, yes, everyone's got this desire to protect their own children and they want to protect their children. But, you know, what is it that they're doing? Everyone's still confused.
Well, that's the thing. Well, that's the thing, Helena. We're watching it thinking, this is just... I mean, what's going on? What's happening here? There's nothing. They're literally doing nothing. They're walking around, people are taking pictures, but there's no outcome, and they're absolute out-and-out hypocrites. I want to ask you about this particular quote. Prince Harry took a veiled swipe at Elon Musk after the Southport riots, and he says, what happens online transfers to the streets in minutes. I mean, no, it doesn't. No, it doesn't.
No. I mean, Prince Harry catastrophises with everything that we see all the time. Everything's awful, terrible. He thinks everyone's out to get him, and you know, thinks he's the person that should be waving the flag, the Pied Piper, leading everyone on to better things. This is not the case at all, and actually, I just feel that his opinion a lot of the time is quite dangerous. I missed that, in fact, that you just mentioned. I don't mind. I think the whole thought of, you know, challenging conglomerates with reference to online safety and helping in that way and getting them to put money into their pocket, you know, into research. That's fine if he wants to do that. But I think hitting out and just making these random statements, I don't think he's qualified to do that.
Well, he's catching on the back. Well, he's catching on the back of the Southport riots, isn't he?
He is, and actually, you know, that he's in Colombia, for goodness sake. You know, it's so not safe. You know, what's going on? This is silly. The riots we had here, they're quick, they're over. There was lots of meaning behind it, but it's how can he talk about, you know, these riots? He's not qualified to do that.
Helena, can I?
And he's in Colombia.
Sorry to interject.
Yes.
Can I just ask you, what is the fascination with Harry and Meghan? Because I speak to people, I speak to our viewers, I read the comments, and they all say, I don't care about Harry and Meghan. People in my family do it. They say, I don't care about Harry and Meghan, and the next minute they'll send me a Mad Online article about Meghan doing something. What is the fascination with Harry and Meghan, and why do we care, even though we say we don't?
Look, you know, at the moment we know the royal family are not out. They're sort of, you know, ill, but they're also on holiday. This is a real big time at the moment for Meghan and Harry to stand out, you know, to their moment of glory as such. It's, you know, 24/7 rolling news. Everyone's intrigued. They may be, you know, we're human, we're fickle. You know, we want to know more all the time. And, you know, we need news. They know that they'll get themselves in the papers. And I just can't. The whole thought about the soft diplomacy and what the royal family stand for is really not what they stand for, and it's I think it's hugely damaging. But to remember as well, I've been thinking about, you know, the vice president, you know, seeing them on Netflix and thinking, oh great, Meghan's a great fit, and you know she can tell her story and everything. I mean, she loves her, the African Colombian and the women's rights sector. And also she said that she loved Princess Diana. And I think, again, there's this little bit of backlog. It's almost like they are this little second royal family, but they're not. And there has to be some distinction somewhere along the line because it's doing a lot of damage.
Helena Shard, thank you very much. Really good to talk to you. She's great. She's a royal broadcaster. Yeah, it's interesting that, though, isn't it? They're talking as though they have empathy and compassion for people, but they have no empathy and compassion for their own family. So, again, whatever they say, whatever they do, until there's some sort of apologies or some sort of acceptance of their own part in this, I can't take them seriously.
I don't know why anyone cares. I don't know why they're held in such high esteem.
We care because of the way they're not held in high esteem. We just care because of the way they treat the royal family.
Up next is Dame Priti Patel's Tory leadership in peril after taking no responsibility for sky-high migration numbers. Chris Hope, our political editor, will be with us next. You're with Britain's Newsroom on GB News.
We're proud to be GB News, the People's Channel. And as you know, we always love to hear your views. Now, there's a new way of getting in touch with us at gbnews.com/your say. By commenting, you can be part of a live conversation and join our GB News community. You can even talk to me, Bev Turner, or any of the members of the GB News family.
I'm Stephen Dixon, and thanks for joining us on GB News, Britain's news channel.
This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
Apparently, almost 70% of 18 to 25-year-olds, we don't know whether that's men or women, but they say that women shouldn't breastfeed in public. 19% would even go as far as labelling it disgusting.
Well, only a quarter of Brits say that women shouldn't have to cover up when they're breastfeeding. So clearly there is a big debate here and one to get to the bottom of. And to do so, we're joined by parenting journalist Annette Kellu. Really good to see you this morning, Annette.
Really good to see you.
Why is this stigma still existing in our society?
I think we've got a case here going on of double standards. I don't know about you, but I live near a park, OK? One little hint of sun, the men get completely naked. Honestly, you've never seen anything like it. The bodies are out, all different shapes and sizes. So why is it not OK for a woman to feed her baby? You know, we've got this whole thing. They're OK to be naked doing what they want. Why can't a woman just feed her baby? Why is it shameful in 2024? And it's interesting what you say about the 18 to 25-year-olds, because I really want to know, are they men or women? Because I feel like they'd be men.
I was going to say, have you got a hunch? Have you got a suspicion?
Yes, I have. And I think as well, they're thinking of them as sexy time, you know? And I feel like they're not... Well, maybe that's because they're bombarded with images and they see things like that they're seeing it in that context. But it's really not. It's feeding the baby. It's simple. Shouldn't be shameful.
But do you think for men it's like they can't see the difference? There's so much porn in society, isn't there, that breasts are sexualised and seen as this sexual object and not actually for their main primary purpose, which is actually feeding a child.
Immediate association.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah,
they can't.
And you can't see that they could have two functions.
Absolutely. And to them as well, I feel like they see it, and on the other side of it, they think like, ooh, mummy, and that brings up weird feelings for them, maybe.
GB News, the People's Channel.
I'm Christopher Hope. From pop stars to politicians, I'll interview anybody in a pub who's got a political opinion. Join me every Friday on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube or gbnews.com, or wherever you get your podcasts. This is GB News, the People's Channel.
I'm Arlene Foster on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Now, has Dame Priti Patel blown her chances of becoming the next Tory leader after refusing to apologise for sky-high migration figures? She spoke exclusively to GB News.
What about all those international students? They came in after the pandemic. Are we saying that they should not have come into the country? So
brought their families there, didn't they, on your watch?
So the system, no, actually, no.
Well, we're joined by our political editor, Christopher Hope. Christopher, do you feel Priti Patel, has she blown her chances? Was it wise for her to not apologise for the net migration figures?
Hi, Nana. Hi, Ben. That's right. It's interesting, isn't it? But you've got these different candidates trying to attack left and right as they try and appeal for support from, say, 120 or so Tory MPs to get through to that final two. Of course, there are 6 candidates to be Tory leader to replace Rishi Sunak. That goes down to 4 in the first week of September and then 2 after the party conference. And what you've got here is Priti Patel saying, why should we apologise for net migration at record levels? Well over a million arriving in just 2 years, basically on the government's points-based system, because it came after the borders were closed during COVID. It comes with a war in Ukraine, people fleeing Ukraine coming here, those from Hong Kong coming here. Let's not apologise for this. We can't do without nurses and doctors, and that to me is a clear appeal by the most right wing of the 6 candidates to the centre ground, where most of the parliamentary party is. And interestingly, you saw Tom Tugendhat. He launched his campaign. He's very moderate, very centrist, a Tory left really, with an article in the Telegraph saying that the UK might pull out of the European Convention on Human Rights. So he's trying to appeal to the right. So what you've got is different MPs here appealing to different wings of the party and using us in the media.
Yeah, Chopper, do you think Priti perhaps, I mean, the argument is she got the tone wrong. Even if you think that, even if you believe what she's saying, and she believed it, do you not think she should have just said, yeah, I know we broke some election promises and I understand that and we'll try harder next time? It just seems to be a bit politically naive.
Or honest, Ben, or honest. I mean, Suella Braverman, we know what she says. Suella Braverman says, I tried to do it, the Treasury stopped me cutting back on migration earlier, I wrote letters to the Prime Minister, they weren't properly answered. You know, we know what Suella would say, and of course she was kind of almost a rival for the right of the party the last time that they all ran for leadership. So I think Priti Patel has got a different view. She thinks, well, I'll be honest about this, we have to supply a workforce to the care sector, many of them come from overseas. Let's own that one rather than fight it.
Got it.
Christopher, thank you very much.
That's all from Britain's Newsroom today. Hope you've had fun and it's been informative. Nana's back tomorrow. I'm back tonight, 8 till 9. What time are you on?
Next, so we've got Good Afternoon Britain. Stay tuned. I'll be here at 3 tomorrow. Don't miss it.
Well, Emily, I just got off a train and it turns out that these inflation-busting pay rises aren't going to prevent the strikes. They're going back on strike. Can you believe it?
I thought they would. I thought they would. Terrible. We're also going to be talking about protest free speech. Should it be banned to protest by silent prayer outside an abortion clinic? That's what the Home Office is apparently considering. So we're going to get stuck into that debate there. So please do stay with us. It's Darren today with me, Emily Carver. Good Afternoon Britain, 12 till 3. Stay tuned.
Looks like things are heating up. Boxed boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Hello, welcome to your latest weather update from the Met Office here on GB News. Some fine weather around today, and for most of us, going to last through the weekend as well. Not too hot, not too cold, most places dry and seeing some sunshine. We are between weather systems. Well, most of us are, because this one is going to approach the far north of Scotland. It's not going to be completely fine here. There will be showers and quite a brisk and gusty wind at times, particularly tonight. Patchy rain clearing away from the southeast to early doors this morning, so now it's fine and bright, sunny spells for the most part. A bit more cloud at times over northern England, Northern Ireland, but generally a fine summer's day with temperatures pretty close to the average. Quite warm still in the southeast, but not as hot as it has been. Obviously feeling cool with the gusty winds and the fairly frequent showers.